On rend grâce.
On est en pleine forme.
Oui, oui, par la grâce de Dieu.
Bonsoir, maman Perrine.
Bonsoir, tonton Gabi.
Tu es là?
Comment à Lomé et le temps à Lomé?
Ah, il fait très, très chaud à Lomé.
Oh, chez nous ici, il a plu le matin. Donc, il fait moins chaud.
Il fait très, très chaud ces derniers temps à Lomé.
Beaucoup de courage. OK. Il est moins 20, peut-être que nous allons commencer, c'est possible?
Oui, 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 oui. Très possible.
OK. Nous allons demander au frère William de prier pour remettre ces moments entre les mains du Seigneur.
Prions le Seigneur. Notre Père, notre Dieu, nous voulons te bénir. Nous te rendons gloire encore, Seigneur, pour ce 4e jour de notre formation. Nous voulons te recommander particulièrement cette journée. Seigneur, viens prendre encore le contrôle au nom de Jésus. Que tu commences la séance avec nous, que tu continues, que tu achèves avec nous au nom de Jésus. Prions pour tous les intervenants, Seigneur. Prions pour la connexion. Prions pour l'électricité, Seigneur. Que tout se passe bien pour la gloire de ton nom. Prions pour l'orateur. Nous prions pour nous-mêmes, Seigneur. Dispose nos cœurs afin que nous puissions recevoir, afin d'impacter le monde pour toi. Merci au nom de Jésus. Amen.
Amen. Comme le psaume 65 nous recommande, au verset 2 du chapitre 35, il est écrit « Avec confiance au Dieu, on te louera dans Sion et on accomplira les vœux qu'on t'a fait. » Je crois qu'avec toute l'instruction, le renouvellement de l'intelligence qui nous est donné au travers de cette formation, nous ne pouvons que louer le Seigneur. Et je crois qu'on va accomplir les vœux que nous allons lui faire parce que, étant donné que notre intelligence est renouvelée, nous serions des meilleurs représentants, des meilleurs témoins de Christ auprès de quiconque nous témoignerons de lui. Alors, nous pouvons lui dire merci pour ces journées, merci pour cette journée, merci pour cette formation. Nous pouvons donc chanter, j'espère que chez vous, vous avez déjà entendu ce chant, c'est un vieux chant qui dit « Nous voulons te remercier pour cette merveilleuse journée. » Nous voulons te remercier pour cette merveilleuse journée, car pour nous maintenant, qu'il pleuve, neige, fasse grand vent, le soleil qui est dans nos cœurs est toujours à son zénith. Entouré de mes frères et sœurs, je veux glorifier ton nom. Que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié. Seigneur, que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié. Seigneur, nous voulons te remercier pour cette merveilleuse journée, car pour nous maintenant, qu'il pleuve, neige, fasse grand vent, le soleil qui est dans nos cœurs est toujours à son zénith. Entouré de mes frères et sœurs, je veux sanctifier ton nom. Que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton nom soit sanctifié. Seigneur, que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton nom soit sanctifié. Seigneur, Nous voulons te remercier pour cette merveilleuse journée, car pour nous maintenant, qu'il pleuve, neige, fasse grand vent, le soleil qui est dans nos cœurs est toujours à son zénith, entouré de mes frères et sœurs, je veux glorifier ton nom. Que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié. Seigneur, que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié, que ton nom soit glorifié. Seigneur, nous allons bénir le Seigneur, nous allons le louer, nous allons lui rendre grâce pour ce qu'il a permis, cette formation, afin de transformer notre intelligence, de renouveler notre intelligence pour que nous sachions ce qui est bon, agréable et parfait, de telle sorte que nous puissions témoigner d'une Christ, que nous puissions le sanctifier, que nous puissions le glorifier dans nos vies, en le témoignant dans nos vies, pour que les autres connaissent le vrai Dieu. Repenser à Dieu qui était en train de blâmer les amis de Job parce que les amis de Job n'avaient pas sanctifié le nom de Dieu. Remercions le Seigneur pour ce qui nous donne de pouvoir mieux le sanctifier au travers du renouvellement de l'intelligence que nous recevons au travers de cette formation. Bénissons-le. Notre Père et notre Dieu, nous t'exprimons toute notre reconnaissance et notre louange, Seigneur, pour ce que tu nous délivres de notre ignorance au travers de cette formation depuis lundi, Seigneur. Nous sommes le 4e jour. Tu es en train de renouveler, Seigneur, notre intelligence afin que nous puissions voir, Seigneur, nous puissions comprendre ce qui est bon, agréable et parfait. De telle sorte, Seigneur, que nous puissions te sanctifier au travers de notre témoignage parce que nous sommes tes représentants, nous sommes tes ambassadeurs, Seigneur. Sans parti pris, afin que nous puissions te témoigner avec amour, Seigneur. Ce que tu veux réellement, c'est que nous puissions voir le monde avec tes yeux. Que nous puissions maintenant voir le monde, Seigneur, de ta part, selon, Seigneur, ton regard et non pas le nôtre. Oh, nous te rendons grâce, Seigneur, pour cette connaissance. Merci de nous délivrer de l'ignorance, notre Père et notre Dieu. Merci de faire de nous des meilleurs représentants. Merci de faire de nous, Seigneur, des personnes aimantes qui pourront, Seigneur, voir Dieu au travers de nous, dans notre façon de parler, pour que nous ne rejetons personne, pour que nous ne méprisons personne, Seigneur. Merci parce que tu nous as fait descendre de nos sycomores, Seigneur, de nos orgueils, de nos façons, Seigneur, mon Père et mon Dieu, de mal témoigner de toi. Nous te bénissons, Seigneur. Nous allons bénir le Seigneur pour son serviteur, le docteur Christ, qui est depuis lundi ses vertus pour nous enseigner, pour nous équiper. Nous allons bénir le Seigneur pour cela et nous allons demander en fait qu'il équipe davantage. Prions ensemble. Notre Père, nous bénissons ton nom pour ce que tu as utilisé ton serviteur pour nous équiper depuis lundi. Ce que nous te demandons, Seigneur, c'est que tu le remplisses davantage, Seigneur, mon Père et mon Dieu, pendant ces jours restants. Enfin, réellement, Seigneur, que le Saint-Esprit l'utilise davantage. Et Seigneur, mon Père et mon Dieu, je t'en supplie, dispose nos cœurs de telle sorte que nous soyons capables, Seigneur, d'écouter, de comprendre et de vivre cela. Nous bénissons ton nom. Nous allons prier le Seigneur de telle sorte qu'il puisse nous garder en bonne santé pour que nous continuions cette formation, pour que le Seigneur permette que nous soyons tous en bonne santé, afin que nous puissions terminer cette formation en beauté. Nous allons demander au frère Aglago aussi d'élever la voix pour cela. Frère Aglago, ou bien sœur Aglago, peux-tu élever la voix pour demander au Seigneur de nous garder en bonne santé pour que nous puissions terminer cette formation?
Bon, oui, Seigneur, nous voulons te bénir pour cette formation que tu as programmée pour nous en ce début d'année. Merci parce que tu as commencé avec nous et tu continues avec nous. Nous voulons te confier la séance de cet après-midi. Prends contrôle, équipe chacun de nous, donne-nous la sagesse pour que nous puissions comprendre et saisir le bien fondé de ce que tu nous fais. Merci parce que tu bénis aussi le formateur. Tu lui donnes la sagesse, tu lui donnes l'onction, tu lui donnes la force de pouvoir bien communiquer. Nous prions pour les interprètes, Seigneur. Merci de les bénir aussi, de leur donner la force pour pouvoir, Seigneur Dieu, travailler efficacement pour la gloire de ton nom. Merci parce que tu es au contrôle. Au nom de Jésus, nous avons prié. Amen.
Amen. Tonton Gabi, je te remets la parole.
Merci beaucoup, merci beaucoup. Que Dieu te bénisse.
Merci, Tonton Gabi.
Merci pour cette direction. Tu vas nous apprendre la chanson là.
D'accord.
C'est très, très intéressant.
OK.
Wow. Okay, Dr. Chris, how are you?
Good morning. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonjour, chers frères et sœurs en Christ. Merci déjà d'être connectés.
Thank you for being connected.
Alléluia. Je voudrais que nous avons encore peut-être 5 minutes.
We still have 5 minutes more.
Que nous prions pour Dr. Carl.
You can pray for
Nous
Dr.
savons
Carl.
que celui qui coordonne ces formations, il a eu un
He's the one
accident.
coordinating this training.
Il est sous plâtre, son pied plâtré. Il en a encore pour quelques semaines.
So he's a little bit sick and we need to pray for him.
Donc, je voudrais que si Miremba est déjà connectée, s'il peut élever sa voix.
So if Miremba she's connected, she can raise her voice to pray.
Vraiment, pour prier pour lui, pour que
To pray for him.
Il se rétablisse le plus tôt possible.
So that he can recover quickly.
Nous pensons aussi à notre sœur Ophélie. Nous pensons à notre
sister Ophélie,
à notre ETL et tous ceux qui ne se portent pas bien. Nous pensons à tonton Ouma qui est convalescent. Si Madame Ba peut élever la voix et implorer la grâce de Dieu sur la vie de nos frères qui ne se portent pas bien. Certains n'ont pas pu prendre part à cette formation à cause de leur état de santé. Mireille là? Sinon, je vais demander à maman Janine.
Oui, tonton Gabi.
Ah, d'accord. Voilà.
Bon, c'est quelle Mireille? Mireille Niaouré ou
Miremba, Miremba.
Ok. Tu disais, tonton?
Que tu pries pour nos bien-aimés qui ne se portent pas bien. Nous pensons à Ophélie. Nous pensons à tonton Pascal. Nous pensons à tonton Oumar qui est convalescent. Et particulièrement, nous prions pour docteur Carl qui s'est fracturé le pied. Son pied se plâtre depuis quelques semaines. Et ça va prendre encore quelques semaines. Prions que la cicatrisation se fasse très rapidement. Donc, voilà le sujet de prière.
Ok, prions. Notre Dieu, notre Père, nous venons devant toi avec confiance, oh Dieu, parce que tu nous as prouvé, Seigneur mon Dieu, mon Père, depuis l'Ancien Testament jusque dans le Nouveau Testament, que tu es le Dieu qui guérit, le Dieu qui fait des signes et des miracles. et tu n'as pas changé. Papa, nous venons devant toi avec, Seigneur mon Dieu, nos bien-aimés qui sont souffrants. Tu dis dans ta parole que par les meurtrissures de Christ, nous avons été guéris. Nous prions que notre héritage, qui est la santé, ô Éternel, soit manifeste, Seigneur mon Dieu, mon Père, dans leur vie et dans leur corps au nom de Jésus. Nous prions, ô Éternel, mon Dieu, mon Père, toi qui dis que tu es le Dieu qui guérit toute maladie, que Seigneur, mon Dieu, mon Père, que tu les guérisses, que tu les touches, ô Éternel, que ce soit notre sœur Ophélie avec ses yeux, que Seigneur, mon Dieu, mon Père, tu agisses, que ce soit, Seigneur, mon Dieu, mon Père, notre Étienne, ô Éternel, que tu agisses, que ce soit docteur Carl, Seigneur, que tu agisses, que ce soit notre frère Ouma dans la convalescence, Papa Ouma, que tu agisses, ô Père, et que ton onction de guérison, ta puissance de guérison, Seigneur, mon Dieu, mon Père, les visite du bout de Seigneur, mon Dieu, Seigneur, mon Dieu, de la tête jusqu'aux pieds, ô Éternel, que ton onction de guérison les visite et que tu apportes dans leur corps la restauration, Seigneur, la restauration totale et complète au nom puissant de Jésus-Christ de Nazareth. Papa, je prie, ô Éternel, et s'il y a une quelconque main invisible derrière, Seigneur, mon Dieu, mon Père, que tout esprit qui amène cette affliction soit lié, précipité dans les abîmes au nom de Jésus et que leurs influences, Seigneur, mon Dieu, mon Père, leurs manipulations dans leur vie soient totalement anéanties maintenant au nom de Jésus. Seigneur, tu dis que si deux personnes s'accordent pour demander quelque chose, cela leur sera accordé. Nous sommes plus de deux, nous sommes plus de trois et nous levons nos yeux vers toi pour dire Abba, Father, Abba, Père, descends et agis et manifeste ta gloire dans la vie de nos bien-aimés et glorifie ton nom et qu'au travers de, pendant qu'ils sont, Seigneur mon Dieu, traversent ces moments, Seigneur mon Dieu, dans la vallée de la peine, que Seigneur, tu satures leur cœur de ta joie, tu satures leur cœur de ta paix, Seigneur mon Dieu, mon Père, que tu les rends ministère pendant cette saison, que ce soit une saison que quand ils vont se souvenir de cela, ils puissent dire que le Seigneur m'a secouru, le Seigneur m'a porté, le Seigneur est avec moi, toi dont le secours ne manque pas dans la détresse. Oui, Seigneur, tu es fidèle et nous te faisons confiance que tu agiras même au-delà de ce que nous imaginons ou pensons par ta grâce, par ton amour pour nous, au nom de Jésus-Christ. Amen.
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 Amen. Merci, Maramba. Merci beaucoup pour cette fervente prière. Nous saluons l'équipe de la traduction. J'espère que Patrick est en poste, Olivier est déjà là, tonton Edouard. Nous saluons la coordination technologique assurée par le révérend Biche. Que Dieu vous bénisse. Donc, nous passons la parole à notre formateur.
Pardon, tonton Gabi.
Oui.
Patrick est en réunion SLM Global, donc il va nous joindre dans quelques minutes.
D'accord. Je crois qu'Olivier est là. Olivier, tu es là, n'est-ce pas? OK. Dr. Chris, you are welcome. Over to you. Dr. Chris est là?
Yes. Good morning. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Comment ça va?
Ça va très bien.
Ça va bien.
Good. Well, thank you for all the prayers. It was nice to have a translation this morning from Olivier. Thank you. Is that Olivier translating? Merci. So, well, it's been pretty crazy over here in the United States. I don't know if you all have been watching the news, or if you know what's going on over here, but things are pretty crazy. The president is in a lot of trouble and there's a lot of controversy going on. Do you guys see these things in the news? Do they talk about what's happening over here?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the Lord is in control. He doesn't change. He knows what he's doing. We're in good hands. So we don't worry. But it's really nice to be with you again this morning. I appreciate your prayers for our meetings together and for for me. I've been praying for all of you as well. So I think we'll pick up today where we left off yesterday. I did send a link in the WhatsApp to Gabrielle for the video. If you didn't get a chance to, if you wanted to rewatch that video, Gabrielle has that. I'm trying to find a way to send the link to my slides, but the file is so big, I haven't been able to do it yet. But I'll try to get all that to you guys. So, okay, before we start, I had a question, just another way to get to know you a little bit more. So suppose I came out there to visit you in Togo or Côte d'Ivoire, and I was teaching the class. We finished class, we have dinner, and then what would we do in the evenings? What would be a normal evening in your home or in your community? What would be something we would do in the evening? Yes, anyone can answer. Would we stay home and, well, yeah, go ahead, Patrice.
Oh, oui, Richard.
Yes.
Si je comprends bien la question, c'est juste après le dîner du soir, c'est ça? Oh, le plus souvent, après le dîner du soir, on suit la télévision. Et après la télévision, le journal. Et après le journal, on passe au lit. En tout cas, le plus souvent. Merci.
So, what else? Oh, I see some chat here. Suppose it was the weekend and you wanted to do something for fun. What would you do? Something with your friends or family? What would be something fun you would do in your city? Amusement. Well, I'll tell you what we would do if you came to visit me. We might. Oh, go ahead. Well, maybe I'll start. So if you came out here to visit us, we might go out to a dinner at a restaurant. That might be a fun thing to do. Go have some really good food. And then in the evening, if the weather is nice, we might go for a walk in the park or go for a walk downtown in the city. We might, if there was a concert, we could go watch a concert of music. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, those would be some fun things. Or just sit outside and talk. Sit outside on the patio and talk. That would be fun. What about you guys? What would you do? What do you do in the evenings on the weekends?
And sometimes we can go to a pizzeria to eat pizza with ice cream.
Pizza, very good. What do you like on your pizza?
Cheese.
Anything else? Anyone? What do you put on your pizza there?
I like also East, Middle East taste,
Dates?
like olive or seafood.
Seafood. Like shrimp? Olives are good.
We can also go to downtown and do Lomé by night. The city is nice to see in the night. And there are some places that are nice and many people are gathered there even in the night.
Yeah. Is there a beach there? Do you have, I know you guys have a coastline. Is there a beach?
Yes, we have one of the best beach on the West Africa, but we don't go there in the night.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It is all
after the Côte d'Ivoire's one. Yeah.
Actually.
So I'll tell you a funny story. When one summer, my family and I, or it's just at that time I didn't have children. My wife and I went to Hungary, the country of Hungary, for a mission trip, and we went to have pizza in Hungary. And of course, everybody has a different version of pizza. But so we looked at the menu, and they had American pizza as one of the choices on the menu, American pizza. And we thought, oh, wow, wonder what American pizza is. So we ordered it, and the pizza came, and it had corn on it. They put corn on the pizza.
Corn.
I guess they thought that was a very American food, corn. So that was strange. I'd never seen corn on pizza. So what would Côte d'Ivoire pizza have on it? Anyone from Côte d'Ivoire?
Yes, Saki can tell us. They will put chocolate on it because they grow chocolate.
Oh, really?
They grow cocoa.
They make good chocolate there, huh?
So, yes, they have good chocolate and coffee.
Oh, good coffee, huh? Very nice. Well, that'd be a good. That's two good reasons to visit Côte d'Ivoire. Yes. Chocolate and coffee, two things I enjoy. Okay, and one other question I had, just getting to know you all, and I'd love to hear from some other people. How do you celebrate Christmas there? What is Christmas like? What do you do for Christmas?
Les femmes parler. Qu'est-ce que vous faites à Noël? Comment vous fêtez Noël chez vous, dans votre pays? Donc, il y a l'interprète. Olivier est là, il va vous interpréter. Donc, parlez, partagez en français.
Oh, OK. Moi, je veux partager. Chez nous au Togo, je crois que la veille, on est à l'église, hein, pour nous les chrétiens. On est à l'église jusqu'à une certaine heure. Et puis, bon, après ça, on rentre chez nous. Et le lendemain, voilà.
La vision du monde, alors.
On se fait de bons repas. Et puis, on se régale, quoi. On mange bien à la togolaise. Voilà, le foufou, souvent avec la sauce blanche. Voilà, ou bien la pâte avec la dame. Voilà, c'est ce que nous mangeons. Merci.
Thank you. Merci. In America, we have a tradition of a Christmas tree. I don't know if you've seen pictures where we have a tree in the house, and we decorate the tree with shiny things and lights. And do you guys have Christmas trees where you are? Does anyone do that?
Yes, some families do that.
Okay, it's just fun to ask questions and hear a little bit about how your culture is different and what it would be like if I were to come visit. Someday I'd love to come visit. So feel free to ask me questions too if you want to at any point. I'll tell you what it's like here in central United States. Although I grew up in Florida, which is on the East Coast, very warm state. That's where I grew up. So I've only lived in Missouri for the second half of my life. So, well, let's begin with our content here. So we're on page, I think it's page 12 in your notes, if you have your notes out. And we're in section 4 of the notes and asking, what is a worldview? So we watched the video and I hope that was helpful. I encourage you to watch it again if it was too fast, or if the subtitles were not clear. But I'll read the quote that's in the notes here from William Alston. It says, "It can be argued on the basis of facts concerning the nature of man and the condition of human life that human beings have a deep-seated need to form some general picture of the total universe in which they live, in order to be able to relate their own fragmentary activities to the universe as a whole in a way meaningful to them, and that life in which this is not carried through is a life impoverished in a most significant respect." And then James Sire, who's an author who's written a number of books on worldview, he gives a definition of what a worldview is here in your notes. He says, a worldview is a commitment, a fundamental orientation of the heart that can be expressed as a story or in a set of presuppositions, which are assumptions, which may be true, partially true, or even false, which we hold consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently, that we hold about the basic constitution of reality, and that provides the foundation on which we live and move and have our being. How's the pace for the translation? Is it going well? Okay, so let me go to the...
Oui.
Now see. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. Look at the chat. Oh, Beaches here. Okay. Okay, so a worldview involves presuppositions and assumptions. So in your notes there's a blank. The word is presuppositions and assumptions. Presuppositions are things that you assume to be true, that you hold to be true, that you don't often think about. They're often some things that are kind of unconscious or subconscious, the things that you hold. So for instance, you might go through life with the assumption that people are generally good or that people are generally sinful, right? So different people have different assumptions about that. So the way you treat people, the way you might do your work, or the way you might raise your children is deeply affected by that presupposition, right? So if you believe people are basically good and that all we need to do is sort of let them go free and get out of their way and they'll do good things. And if we get in their way, that's when bad things happen. Then you'll treat like say, raise your children very differently, as opposed to thinking that human beings are naturally sinful and naturally tend towards doing wrong. And to just let them go free would be a disaster. So that's one assumption. Or you might have a presupposition, like as a Christian, that the world was created for a purpose, that you were created for a purpose. But an atheist might think that the universe is just an accident and we're here by accident and there's no purpose. That would change how you choose your career, maybe how you decide what to do with your life. And it can also take the form of stereotypes. So often people have stereotypes of certain kinds of people, either by race or by gender or by nationality. You might assume certain groups of people are a certain way, and then you don't think about that. You don't say it out loud, but it's sort of in the background and how you deal with those people. I remember when I was a kid, and I lived in Florida, and the family across the street was going to visit Colorado, which is another state kind of in the Western United States. And I had never been to Colorado. I didn't know anything about it, but I just, for some strange reason, I had this assumption that if you left Florida, that everything was like primitive, that there's no electricity and there would be no phones or television, that for some reason, if you went to these other places, it'd be like going to live in the forest or something. So I don't know where I got that assumption, but it was really strange. But sometimes we just have these strange presuppositions that we're not aware of. And you have presuppositions, and then you have your explicit beliefs. And your explicit beliefs are the things that you would say out loud that you believe, the things that you're aware of believing. Like you would say, oh, I believe in God. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that, I believe certain things about the universe. Like I believe the world is round, the earth is round, and, there are other planets out there, and the sun is much bigger than the earth. These are sort of explicit beliefs that you have. Here's another quote down at the bottom of the page here. It says, "It seems clear that everybody has got some kind of metaphysics. And metaphysics is just what you believe about reality, like what is real. That's what metaphysics is. Even if he thinks he hasn't got any. Indeed, the practical, hard-headed individual who only goes by what he sees generally has a very dangerous kind of metaphysics. In other words, the kind of which he is unaware. Dangerous because in it, assumptions and inferences are being mistaken for directly observed facts, with the result that they are effectively riveted in an almost unchangeable way to the structure of thought." So another example of this, it can come in the form of a bias, right? So in the video, he talked about confirmation bias and how in politics, some people are on the right politically, some people are on the left, I guess. And people, depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, you'll make a lot of assumptions about the other side. So for instance, in all these debates now that are going on about the president here in our country, people who are politically on the right just assume that everything that's being said by the left is a lie, and everything that's being portrayed on the media is a lie, and they don't believe any of it. And the people on the left have all these assumptions about the people on the right, that they're crazy, and that that they are not thinking rationally. And so neither side will listen to anything the other side is saying, because they assume that the other side is either lying or crazy. So there's not really much conversation that happens. So there's a lot of division. It causes a lot of division in our country because people just assume things about one another. So you have a lot of presuppositions. This is part of what your worldview is. But in addition to that, there's a couple other ways to think about it. Oh, well, let me illustrate presuppositions for a moment. So look at this diagram, and I want you to tell me, and you can just turn off your mic and shout out a number. How many triangles do you see in this picture? How many triangles?
Triangle.
6, 8,
6,
9,
8,
6,
8,
8,
6 et 8. Non, 8. Parce que les deux gros. Les deux gros petits qui sont autour.
8.
Okay, I hear lots of different numbers. I hear 6, 8, 3. Any other numbers between 6, 8, and 3? 10? 5. Okay. 5. Okay. All right. So, well, 10. Okay. All right. Well, here I'll tell you how many triangles there are. There are no triangles. There are 0 triangles in this picture because it's an optical illusion. All you have is you have three circles with a wedge cut out, and then 3 little I don't know, V's. I don't know what you call that. There are no actual triangles drawn there. It would have to have 3 sides to be a triangle, but there are no triangles. But see, our mind has this natural tendency to just assume that that's a triangle. It sort of projects a triangle onto the picture, even though there are no triangles. And so worldviews are like this too. There are these parts of our mind, these beliefs and ideas that just naturally cause us to interpret things a certain way without even being aware of it. So this just naturally, when you see things like this, you think, oh, those are triangles, but there are really no triangles there. Your mind sort of creates it. And your mind is naturally does that. So worldviews are like that too. They naturally interpret your experiences and things that you see in the world. So worldviews can be thought of like a network or a web. All our beliefs. So we actually have millions of beliefs. You might be surprised to know that you have millions of beliefs, maybe even more than that, and most of your beliefs are stored in your memory. Right? You have millions of these beliefs about your childhood and all the experiences you had as a child, beliefs about mathematics, beliefs about science and geography, beliefs about the weather, beliefs about the Bible. I mean, you just have so many different beliefs. And even now you're forming many beliefs. You have a belief right now that you're sitting in a chair. You have a belief that you're looking at a computer. You believe that you're hearing my voice right now. You believe that you're seeing certain colors on the screen. So those are beliefs you're aware of right now, but most of millions of beliefs you have stored in memory. So we have them, and they're all interconnected in various ways. So some beliefs support other beliefs or affect other beliefs. So for instance, your belief in God, you can think of your belief in God as one of these larger circles, like, because it's more central, it's more important to you, so it would be larger, and you could think of it as being more significant in your mind. So, but it affects other beliefs, right? So that's going to affect your beliefs about morality, your beliefs about purpose. It's going to affect your beliefs about the design of the universe, right? And if, let's say you have certain beliefs about people, about whether humans are good or bad, or what people are like, and that will affect how you think about politics, how you think about, say, law, or how you think about education, or a number of things, depending on how you view people. And when one belief changes, it can send a ripple effect to change other beliefs. Like if you stop believing in God, that would radically change many, many, many other beliefs in your worldview. And you have really 2 kinds of beliefs. You could divide them up into 2 kinds: core beliefs and non-core beliefs. And core beliefs would be the ones, and as it says in your notes, are the defining beliefs of your worldview. They give it its structure, the answers to the big questions. And we're going to look at some big questions in a minute. These sit at the center of your network or web. They support and are tied to everything else, kind of like the hub of a bicycle wheel. You know, you have the spokes, and everything's connected to the hub in the middle. So you have some beliefs that are like that. They're right at the center, connecting everything, holding everything together. And then you have non-core beliefs, and these are other non-defining beliefs of the worldview. They're ones that are less significant. They're ones that you don't hold quite as tightly. You don't defend them quite as passionately. You would be willing to change your mind on them, maybe. Those are the non-core beliefs. And you could think of it like a picture like this. You have many beliefs out here, but at the core of your worldview, you have certain beliefs that you are committed to. These are the beliefs that you hold on to and you'll defend, and you would promote and talk about with other people. And if someone challenged you, you would defend it passionately, and you feel committed and obliged to hold on to it and to make sure you maintain it and nurture it, like your faith. But out on the outside, you have a lot of non-core beliefs, and these you hold a little more loosely, and they might be things that aren't quite as important and may change over time. In Christianity, we have central core beliefs of Christianity, but there might be beliefs around the outside that you might hold, but Christians might disagree on, right? And we'll talk more about that. But like, how should we do baptism, or what kind of worship music is the right music, or what should a church look like? Things like that maybe you have beliefs about but are not core to your faith. So for instance, I think I told you that the first day that I became a Christian in college, I was 21 years old, and a friend of mine I'd been talking to, he was really the first person that ever shared the gospel with me. And after a series of events, I came to faith. It was a pretty dramatic experience for me. But I started going to church, and very quickly, I began to not only have these core beliefs of Christianity, but I gathered a lot of non-core beliefs that may or may not have been really necessary. So for instance, I got the impression that I could never ever listen to secular music. So I had grown up, one of my favorite bands was U2. I don't know if you guys know who U2 is. It's a very well-known European band that does rock music. So I threw away all my records and all my music from U2. I got rid of it because I thought, as a Christian, I couldn't listen to it anymore. And then many years later, I discovered, of course, that they were Christians and that a lot of their music had Christian messages in it. So I realized it would be okay to listen to them, and I probably didn't need to throw away all my music, but that would probably be a non-core belief about what kinds of music are appropriate, or what kind of music you can listen to. Other non-core beliefs might be, how you manage your finances, the right way to do that, or the right way to parent your children, or whether college is important, things like that, or what kind of career is valuable and important. So we have core beliefs and non-core beliefs. Here's another quotation. Got lots of quotations in here. Mortimer Adler says that more consequences for thought and action follow from the affirmation or denial of God than from answering any other basic question. They follow for those who regard the question as answerable only by faith or only by reason, and even for those who insist upon suspending judgment entirely. So what you believe about God, for instance, dramatically affects your worldview. So here's what I want to do for a few minutes is I want to do some breakout groups. Actually, let's stick there. Okay. I want to do some breakout groups. And what I'd like to do is I'd like you to come up with, in 5 minutes in your breakout group, come up with 5 to 10 core beliefs of Christianity, what you think are the absolute most important things that a Christian must believe. At least 5, maybe 10 of those. Come up with a list in your groups. We'll just do it for about 5 minutes. I'm guessing somebody's putting that together for us. Can somebody make some breakout groups? Usually I think that's beach. Oh, great. Thank you.
Just 1 minute. Please, sorry. I put 7. 7.
La vie chrétienne. Je voulais dire que nous vivons la vie chrétienne par la foi. Très important.
Allô? J'ai juste entendu la voix de Mireille, je ne sais pas si le groupe fonctionne.
Allô? Maman, c'est comme si je suis dans un autre groupe.
J'ai juste entendu.
Ah.
Oui, j'ai...
Ah, je suis dans un autre groupe. J'ai mis le volume alors.
Mireille, tu es dans quel groupe? C'est maintenant qu'ils font l'affectation, quoi. Mabanga. Saki?
Oui, oui. Oui.
Faisons pour nous alors.
Mais comment? Nous sommes silencieux comme ça, là.
Il faut qu'il y ait un chef.
Non, le problème, c'est que moi-même, je ne comprends pas à faire là.
On dit de donner 5 quoi? 5. Je sais que dans l'autre groupe, là, je donnais l'exemple que les croyances que les chrétiens doivent croire, c'est que nous vivons la vie chrétienne par la foi. C'était ma proposition. 5 éléments qu'en tant que chrétiens, nous devons croire, qui va influencer notre vision du monde. Je pense bien que c'est ça la question.
Allô? Oui, tu es dans ce groupe. Je ne comprends pas comment le groupe fonctionne. Tantôt on est 9, tantôt on est 4. Je n'arrive pas à comprendre, quoi. Mireille, tu entends ma voix?
Je vous entends.
Ok. C'est un groupe fluctuant, hein, c'est ce que j'ai ressenti. C'est un groupe qui fluctue.
C'est un
là.
groupe qui... Même maintenant, les 5. Papa Silas est venu.
Oui, c'est un groupe fluctuant. Alors, vraiment, c'est un groupe non structuré qui va faire le compte rendu, qui va... Bon, comme tu as commencé, tu fais notre compte rendu.
Okay,
j'ajoute aussi une idée à ce que tu as dit. Une des choses fondamentales, c'est que notre salut est par la foi et non par les œuvres. Tu l'as déjà dit.
S'il vous plaît, ramenez-moi à la salle 3.
Directeur, je vous écoute.
Je ne comprends pas la logique de ces groupes-là.
C'est ma banque qui distribue. Tantôt, nous sommes là. Il me semble que nous sommes dans la grande salle.
Je crois que vous êtes dans la grande salle. Oui, et vous l'avez ramené parce que c'est déjà fini, les 5 minutes sont épuisées.
Ok.
Pardon?
Il vous a ramené parce que les 5 minutes sont épuisées.
Ok.
Mais nous,
vous êtes dans la grande salle.
On n'était même pas dans un groupe.
Mais nous, on n'est même pas partis.
Vous n'étiez pas dans un groupe.
Ah bon?
Sinon, moi, j'étais dans un groupe. Hein.
Moi aussi.
Mais vous auriez dû signaler que vous n'étiez pas dans un groupe. Oh là là.
Oui, c'est ça.
Vous n'êtes pas enlevé.
Bon.
Okay.
Vous étiez dans des groupes sans le savoir.
Ça aussi, c'est une vision du monde.
Okay, it looks like everyone's back. So I'd love to hear. Let's get a list. I'm going to make a list. If I had a blackboard, actually, I can't type it out. So.
Donc, s'il y a des questions vous posez, et si vous pouvez donner vos réponses par rapport aux 5 éléments fondamentaux.
Ok. Nous étions dans le groupe 7.
So, you are in group 5.
Et à la question de savoir quels sont les 5 éléments fondamentaux sur lesquels les chrétiens doivent réellement croire.
So, the 5 fundamental things that a Christian should believe in.
Nous avons partagé les 5 éléments suivants.
So, we said 5 things.
1. L'existence de Dieu en tant que créateur.
So, the existence of God as a creator.
2.
2.
La parole de Dieu qui est infaillible ou la véracité de la Bible.
The word of God that is infallible.
3.
3.
La vie après la mort.
Life after death.
4.
4.
Le salut en Christ pour l'amour de Dieu.
Salvation in Christ for God love.
Et le dernier élément, le
The
Saint-Esprit.
last one. Le dernier c'est quoi?
Le Saint-Esprit ou la puissance du Saint-Esprit.
Okay, the last one is the Holy Spirit, or the power of the Holy Spirit.
Merci.
What was number 2?
Numéro 2, c'était quoi?
Pardon?
Le numéro 2, c'était quoi?
Le numéro 2, c'était la parole de Dieu qui est infaillible ou la véracité de la Bible.
So the word of God or the truthfulness of the Bible.
Okay. Okay, so let me hear from some other groups.
Donc, je vais écouter maintenant d'autres groupes.
Ok, je vais faire le résumé.
Numéro 3.
Aïe, aïe, aïe.
Groupe numéro 3.
Ok, allez-y.
Nous avons trouvé l'existence de Dieu créateur, le Dieu tout-puissant.
Group 3, we found one, the existence of a powerful God.
La venue de Jésus, sa mort et sa résurrection.
The coming of Christ is therefore and his resurrection.
D'où l'existence de la Trinité aussi. Dieu le Père, nous croyons au Dieu le Père, Dieu le Fils, Dieu le Saint-Esprit.
So the existence of the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit.
Et nous croyons à la vie éternelle.
And we believe also in eternal life, the last one, eternal life.
Groupe 6. Groupe 6. Donc, comme premier élément ici au groupe 6, nous croyons que Dieu est créateur de toutes choses. Voilà, comme premier élément, nous croyons que Dieu est créateur de toutes choses.
So first one, we believe that God is the creator of everything.
Deuxième élément, c'est l'homme est pécheur.
Second element, God is the creator of everything.
Voilà. L'homme est pécheur. Deuxième élément, l'homme est pécheur.
Okay, second thing, man is sinful.
Voilà, troisième élément, l'œuvre rédemptrice de Christ.
The redemptress death of Christ on the cross.
Quatrième élément, la présence du
Saint-Esprit
dans le
power of the Holy Spirit.
Cinquième élément, la Trinité.
And the last one is the Trinity. Last one, the Trinity.
Okay. Others? Anyone else? Anything? Are there any beliefs that have not been mentioned?
Une monsieur qui n'est pas encore mentionné, que vous voulez mentionner?
So far, here's what I have so far from you.
Le salut par la foi et non par les œuvres.
Okay.
So salvation by faith, not by works. Salvation by faith, not by work.
Good.
Très bien.
So here's what I have.
Oui, vas-y.
La vie chrétienne par la foi. Vivre la vie chrétienne par la foi.
So live a Christian life by faith. Live a Christian life by faith.
Okay. Merci.
Ok, merci beaucoup.
Allô?
Oui,
Allô?
Allô?
Oui, allez-y.
Je vais ajouter l'enlèvement.
So you want to act up your rapture? Your rapture.
Okay.
L'enlèvement de l'église.
Allô?
The rapture of the church. Oui, allez-y.
Any more?
Il y a plus.
Le groupe 2. Nous avons trouvé les 5 éléments fondamentaux.
Okay,
Salut en
allez-y.
Jésus-Christ.
So, salvation in Christ.
Salut en Jésus-Christ par la foi.
Salvation in Christ by faith.
Et nous croyons à la vie éternelle.
And we believe in eternal life.
Croire à la mort et à la résurrection de Jésus-Christ et son ascension. Nous croyons à l'enlèvement de l'Église.
We believe in the rapture of Christ.
L'existence de Dieu suprême.
The existence of the supreme God.
Retour de Christ.
The returning of Christ.
Merci.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alors, Dr. Chris, can you wait a little bit? I want to talk to Bish.
I'm sorry, what?
Can you wait 1 minute? I want to talk to Bish first.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Allô, Révérend Bish. Révérend Bish est là?
Allô, Olivier?
Oui, oui,
Il faut que tu ailles dans la salle d'anglais pour que Patrick...
Ça n'affiche pas chez moi.
Reste maintenant anglais-français. Donc toi, tu dois aller dans la salle. Il faut paramétrer.
Ok, mais chez moi, ça n'affiche pas.
On dirait que tu n'as pas paramétré.
Donc, je dois cliquer sur anglais.
Attends.
Parce que ça n'apparaît pas chez moi.
Allô?
Oui, allô?
Tu as paramétré, non?
Oui, j'ai vu ça sur français.
Maintenant, il faut qu'on attende Patrick pour qu'on soit sûr maintenant. Maintenant, je t'entends ici.
Mais tu veux que j'aille dans la salle anglais, non?
Non, maintenant c'est bon.
Ok.
Attends, je vérifie Patrick.
Ok.
Allô, Patrick? Allô, Patrick? Allô, Patrick? Patrick, on n'attend pas. Allô, Patrick? Allô? Est-ce que quelqu'un nous attend ici?
Tonton Bitch, il répond, il est dans le
C'est bon?
Patrick dit qu'il est déjà en ligne.
Oui, on vous attend.
Ok, c'est bon. Merci.
Merci,
Ok.
Hein? Il faut Gabou.
Yeah, it's good now. You can continue.
Okay. Okay, we heard just about everything. I think we covered pretty much all the bases. We covered all the big ones.
Donc, on a presque réellement couvert tous les grands éléments.
So, in tradition, one way that we've expressed our core beliefs is I'm going to share my screen.
L'une des façons dont nous exprimons notre croyance fondamentale.
This is the Apostles' Creed. You've probably used. Do you guys use this in your church? You guys ever say this in church?
Est-ce que ça, on le fait ou vous le faites à l'église? Ce passage-là sur la croyance fondamentale. Est-ce que vous dites ça dans votre église, dans vos églises? Je crois dans Dieu, le Tout-Puissant, du Père, Créateur du ciel et du monde, et dans Jésus-Christ, le Christ, son Fils, son seul Fils, notre Seigneur, qui a été conçu par le Saint-Esprit, né de la Vierge Marie, souffert sous Pontius Pilate, été crucifié, était mort et était enterré. Il est descendu en enfer. Le troisième jour,
Confession de foi.
Oui, le credo, on le fait.
Ok.
Le récit, mais chez nous, il n'y a pas d'église catholique sacrée.
On parle de l'église.
Chez nous, les luthériens, on récite ça chaque dimanche.
Okay, so it depends. Not all of them, everybody, not everybody, but some.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is a list. It's a fairly good list. It's been around for a couple thousand years.
Donc, c'est une liste qui existe il y a déjà des années.
And the church, many different churches use the same list. And I'd say this
Et
is a
plusieurs
pretty
églises
good,
copient vraiment à la même liste.
and it's a pretty good summary of what the real important beliefs are.
Et c'est vraiment un résumé de quoi, de ce à quoi ça ressemble vraiment la vraie croyance, la croyance fondamentale.
The book that I had you reading, The Mere Christianity.
Dans le livre que je vais recommander de lire, qui est le christianisme simple.
This is what my copy looks like. The C.S. Lewis book, Mere Christianity.
Donc ça c'est un livre qui a été écrit par C.S. Lewis.
His idea was, the idea of mere Christianity means the sort of the basic ideas of Christianity that all Christians share.
Donc lorsqu'il parle de mere christianity, c'est l'idée qu'il veut développer, c'est que voici des éléments simples sur lesquels chaque chrétien devait réellement fonder sa foi.
And so if you could just, boil it down to just the bare essentials, the basic essential beliefs.
Donc les éléments basiques, les éléments fondamentaux essentiels sur lesquels les chrétiens devaient fonder leur foi.
And those would be things that if you did not believe them, you probably are not a Christian.
Et ce sont des choses fondamentales sur lesquelles si nous ne croyons pas, alors notre foi n'a pas sa raison, ou on n'a pas raison, on n'a pas besoin d'être chrétien.
So things like the Trinity, right?
Les
you have the
choses
Father,
comme
Son, and
la
Holy Spirit.
Trinité, le Saint-Esprit,
So Jesus, the resurrection from the dead,
la
all those
résurrection de
kinds of
Christ
things. The
d'entre
Holy
les
Spirit.
morts.
So those would all be, I would say, would all be core beliefs.
Donc voici des éléments, je peux dire centraux, fondamentaux que nous devons réellement baser notre foi là-dessus.
So if you turn to the next page in your notes, you have a diagram.
Et dans nos notes, nous avons un diagramme que vous voyez sur mon écran.
And it doesn't look like this. It looks a little different, but it's the same
Ça ne ressemble pas à
words.
ce qui est ici, mais c'est un peu différent. Ce que vous voyez sur l'image.
So the most basic question for a worldview is, do you believe in God?
Donc la question fondamentale dans la vision du monde, est-ce que vous croyez en Dieu?
If you say no, if you don't believe
Si
in
vous dites
God,
non,
you're an
et que
atheist,
vous ne croyez pas en Dieu, ça veut dire que vous êtes un athéiste.
and your worldview would be naturalism.
Et votre vision du monde sera le naturalisme.
Which is the idea that all that exists are atoms combined in different ways, and that's all there is.
Et qui est tout ce qui existe, c'est une combinaison d'Adam et Ève.
And then, but if you do believe in God, then there's two basic categories. You might believe there are many gods.
Et si vous
It's
croyez en
polytheism.
Dieu, cela fait ressortir deux catégories. Il y a plusieurs dieux, qui est le polythéisme. Il y a un seul Dieu, qui est le monothéisme.
Right. So, and if you believe in just one God as a monotheist, you
Donc,
might
si vous
think God is
croyez en
personal,
un seul Dieu qui est le monothéisme,
impersonal, non-personal.
c'est qu'il est personnel, il est impersonnel, il est aussi des non personnels.
If you think God is non-personal, you might be a pantheist. That's one kind
Donc,
of
si vous croyez que
view
Dieu
that
est non
God is not a
personnel,
person.
c'est le monothéisme.
God is not a person. It's just a force in the universe.
Donc, vous croyez que Dieu n'est pas une personne, c'est juste une force.
Like in Star Wars. Do you guys watch Star Wars, the movies? You know about those movies?
Le film Star Wars. C'est pas si vous regardez Star Wars. Quelqu'un regarde Star Wars ou bien déjà visualisé le film Star Wars?
Oui, il y a longtemps quand même. Moi, je regardais.
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, in pantheism, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So God is not a person at all.
Le panthéisme, on va parler de ça.
But you might think that God is a person, but he's impersonal, which means he's just very distant. And that's
Si vous pensez que Dieu est impersonnel, et vous pensez que Dieu existe, mais il est un peu loin de nous. Donc c'est ça le déisme.
Yeah, deism is the idea that God created the universe and then walked away.
Donc dans la pensée du déisme, c'est Dieu qui a créé les cieux, la terre, et après qu'il ait créé, il s'est éloigné de nous.
But if you believe in a personal God, then that's theism.
Maintenant, si vous croyez réellement à un Dieu personnel, ça c'est ce qu'on appelle le théisme.
And the three big ones are Judaism, Islam, and Christianity.
Et ce qui sort de là, c'est le judaïsme, l'islam et le christianisme.
And the main difference is your view of Jesus. If you believe Jesus is the Son of God, then that you're a Christian.
Lorsqu'on parle en termes de christianisme, est-ce que vous croyez en Jésus-Christ? Est-ce que vous croyez que Jésus-Christ est Dieu? C'est ça le christianisme.
Okay, so worldviews get their shape and are distinguished from each other by their different answers to the question of what is ultimately real.
Donc la vision du monde, c'est une définition que nous donnons pour pouvoir vraiment trouver ce qui est réellement réel.
I'd like us to look up a couple of Bible passages.
J'aimerais que vous puissiez vous référer à quelques références bibliques.
Isaiah chapter 40.
Isaïe chapitre 40. Isaïe chapitre 40.
Verses 25 through 31.
24 à 31. Isaïe 40, 24 à 31.
And this has
Isaïe
to do
40, 24 à 31.
What Christians believe is the ultimate reality.
Et dans ce passage-là, ce que les chrétiens croient est réellement très important. C'est la réalité réellement.
Would someone be willing to read that aloud for me?
Quelqu'un pourrait ouvrir réellement son micro pour lire Isaïe 40, 24 à 31, à haute voix. Quelqu'un peut lire Isaïe 40, versets 24 à 31, à haute voix, en ouvrant son micro.
Okay, Isaïe 40.
24 à 31.
Vas-y, Tata Ruth.
Allez-y.
Non, allez-y. J'ai déjà fermé mon micro. C'est bon.
Isaïe 40, 24 à 31.
So Isaiah 40, 24 to 31.
Ils ne sont pas même plantés, pas
They
même
are not even planted.
Leur tronc n'a pas même de racines en terre. Ils soufflent sur eux et ils se dessèchent. Et un tourbillon les emporte comme le chaume. À qui me comparez-vous? Pour que je lui ressemble, dit le Saint. Levez vos yeux en haut et regardez. Qui a créé ces choses? Qui fait marcher en ordre leurs armées? Il les appelle toutes par leur nom, par son grand pouvoir et par sa force puissante. Il n'en est pas une qui fasse défaut. Pourquoi dis-tu Jacob? Pourquoi dis-tu Israël? Ma destinée est cachée devant l'Éternel. Mon Dieu, mon droit passe inaperçu devant mon Dieu. Ne le sais-tu pas? Ne l'as-tu pas appris? C'est le Dieu d'éternité, l'Éternel qui a créé les extrémités de la terre. Il ne se fatigue point, il ne se lasse point. On ne peut sonder son intelligence. Il donne de la force à celui qui est fatigué et il augmente la vigueur de celui qui tombe en défaillance. Les adolescents se fatiguent, se lassent et les jeunes chancellent. Mais ceux qui se confient en l'Éternel renouvellent leur force. Ils prennent le vol comme les aigles. Ils courent et ne se lassent point. Ils marchent et ne se fatiguent point.
Merci beaucoup. So here you have a description for the Christian worldview of what is ultimately real. It's God is the
Si vous
ultimate
avez une
reality.
description de la vision fondamentale du christianisme, Dieu est
He is the creator of everything. He is the one
Dieu
who
le créateur de toutes
sustains
choses.
us.
Il est celui réellement qui nous soutient.
And let's go back to Psalm 24 now. Psalm 24.
Allons-y maintenant à Psaume 24. Psaume 24.
Okay, and I'd love to have someone read this as well.
Si quelqu'un a trouvé Psaume 24, il peut lire pour nous.
Psaume
I
24.
know just enough French words that I can almost follow along.
Voilà, donc je veux que vous lisiez. Là, moi aussi, je suis dans ma version anglaise et écoutez aussi vos voix.
Psaume 24. À l'Éternel la terre et ce qu'elle renferme, le monde et ceux qui l'habitent, car il l'a fondé sur les mers et affermi sur les fleuves. Qui pourra monter à la montagne de l'Éternel? Qui s'élèvera jusqu'à son lieu saint? Celui qui a les mains innocentes et le cœur pur. Celui qui ne livre pas son âme au mensonge et qui ne jure pas pour tromper. Il obtiendra la bénédiction de l'Éternel, la miséricorde du Dieu de son salut. Voilà le partage de la génération qu'il invoque, de ceux qui cherchent sa face, de ceux qui cherchent ta face, Dieu de Jacob. Porte, élevez vos linteaux, élevez-vous, porte éternelle, que le roi de gloire fasse son entrée. Qui est ce roi de gloire? L'Éternel fort et puissant, l'Éternel puissant dans les combats. Porte, élevez vos linteaux, élevez-les, porte éternelle, que le roi de gloire fasse son entrée. Qui donc est ce roi de gloire? L'Éternel des armées. Voilà le roi de gloire. Amen.
Thank you.
Merci
So,
beaucoup.
what is the French word for glory? I think I heard you say it many times. But
J'ai entendu dire le mot gloire en français. Donc, quel est le mot glory en français?
gloire? Is that right?
Yeah, it's gloire.
Gloire.
Yeah.
Gloire.
Nice. Merci, merci.
Okay,
So,
merci.
in these passages, we see again just God are the ultimate reality of the universe. He is the thing that comes
Donc,
before
on voit dans ce
everything else.
passage que Dieu est vraiment la réalité ultime de l'univers.
So, also the question of who Jesus is and why he matters is ultimately to be understood against the background of larger worldview questions.
Et encore, qui est Jésus-Christ est aussi un élément central que nous devons réellement comprendre. Et la façon dont il est venu et pourquoi il est mort à la croix.
And of course, different worldviews will disagree on these big questions, right?
Et beaucoup de personnes réellement avec des visions du monde différentes seront en désaccord avec cette question.
And they can't all be true. It's a matter of logic.
Et tout peut être vrai, c'est une question de logique.
Worldviews give logically different answers to the same essential questions.
Donc, la vision du monde a aussi une question centrale à la même question.
It is possible to agree with people at the level of their explicit beliefs.
Donc, c'est possible d'être en accord avec les gens sur ce dont ils croient.
But then hold actually fundamentally different beliefs and incompatible worldviews.
Et aussi tenir aussi une croyance fondamentale de façon incompatible dans la vision du monde.
Okay. Back to the screen.
Si nous revenons maintenant sur l'écran.
So the truth, so quite often there is agreement between people of different worldviews on non-core beliefs. That's in your notes.
Il y a toujours une différence entre les opinions et la vision du monde de chaque personne et de leurs croyances fondamentales.
For example, most worldviews are going to hold that torturing children for fun is wrong, obviously, or that the world is round. It doesn't follow that if the world...
La plupart des visions du monde vont, par exemple, dire que le monde n'est pas vrai.
But it doesn't follow that just because a worldview holds a same belief that we have, that the worldview is true.
Ça ne veut pas dire que parfois la vision du monde croit à la même chose que nous croyons, que le monde n'est pas vrai.
The worldview can include a true belief, but the worldview as a whole may be false.
Donc, la vision du monde peut réellement impliquer ou bien avoir en son sein plusieurs vérités, mais ça peut aussi impliquer des choses qui ne sont pas vraies.
The truth or falsity of a worldview is a function of its core beliefs.
Donc, la vérité et la croyance fondamentale sont des croyances qui se lient.
So there's a difference between the truth of a worldview, like as a whole.
Donc, il y a une différence entre la vérité et la vision du monde comme un tout.
And the truth in a worldview.
Et la vérité est là, dans une vision du monde.
So the truth of a worldview has to do with core beliefs, and the truth in a worldview is the non-core beliefs.
Donc, la vérité d'une vision du monde et la vérité dans une vision du monde.
Back to your notes here. When we understand this, we see why we can affirm that all worldviews have some truth.
Et lorsque nous nous référons à tout ça, on peut maintenant comprendre que pourquoi il y a une différence dans la vision du monde.
Moreover, all worldviews most probably have some things that we as Christians can learn from.
Et toutes les visions du monde sont des choses que nous, en tant que chrétiens, on peut toujours apprendre de cette vision du monde.
This is because of the idea of general revelation.
Et tout ça, c'est à cause de l'idée de la révélation générale.
And that means that God reveals some things about himself to everyone.
Et cela signifie que Dieu a révélé quelque chose qui est propre à lui, à tout le monde.
But we also recognize that it's logical and factual nonsense to say that all worldviews say the same thing.
Et c'est aussi factuel et ça ne porte pas de sens si nous croyons que tout ce que la vision du monde dit est réellement fausse.
Or that they are all true, or
Ou bien tout
equally
ce que la
true.
vision réellement du monde nous communique, tout ça c'est vrai. Donc toutes les visions du monde ont une certaine vérité. Et toutes les religions ne disent pas la même chose.
So different worldviews have different logically competing core beliefs.
Donc toutes les visions du monde ont une certaine vérité.
And often people say that all roads lead to God.
Et souvent les gens ont l'habitude de dire que tout chemin mène à Dieu.
But this is simply false. Logically different roads lead to logically different destinations.
Mais ça c'est faux parce que toute voie ne mène pas forcément à Dieu, mais ça mène à des distances ou bien à des destinations différentes.
Okay, let's pause here for our break. We'll take a 10-minute break.
On va se reposer ici pour quelques minutes.
And we'll come back at 3:19. Is that right? Would that be your time?
On va revenir à 15h20. 15h20. C'est bon, 15h20?
OK.
Révérend Takuyo, 15h20, c'est bon?
C'est bon, Olivier, mon micro était fermé.
OK. Yeah, it's good.
OK.
On est en pause de 10 minutes.
Je pose. Il y a pause. C'est IBS qui va faire la taille de programme là. Non. C'est ceux qui ne vont pas faire. Il y a deux personnes à cause de loi. Donc, toi, tu as
sommes de retour en studio. Si vous nous suivez depuis 6 heures du matin, c'est parfait. Sinon, merci de nous rejoindre. Vous êtes à votre matinale. Matin bonheur, notre première intervenante, c'est une femme, un petit peu Madame Rachel Kambou. Elle est passionnée de cuisine, mais nous l'appelons effectivement Madame Sombara. Elle nous explique les bienfaits de Sombara et nous espérons que vous l'avez finalement compris, ainsi que les bienfaits en ce qui concerne le beurre de karité. Nous en étions là.
On va se trouver dans un milieu, et puis on voit que les choses ne bougent pas. Alors, le milieu est perturbé par des zones négatives. Ces zones négatives, il faut les dégager. L'homme émet des pensées, l'homme reçoit sur ses pensées. Donc, si vous passez votre temps à mettre de mauvaises pensées dans l'espace où vous êtes, il y a beau à penser que les choses n'iront pas de toutes les façons. Il faut être quelque chose qu'on appelle résolument optimiste, je dirais même désespérément optimiste.
Voilà. On a l'impression que ça frise le ridicule, dans le sens où on entend les gens parler et puis on a l'impression qu'ils se projettent tellement loin que ça paraît inaccessible.
Bien sûr.
Toujours en train de dire qu'il sera président.
Bien sûr.
On a l'impression que c'est un déphasage avec ce qui est possible.
C'est ça. Alors, donc, ce sont des lois naturelles. On prend par exemple une loi simple. Vous payez votre facture d'électricité d'eau, je paye ma facture d'eau d'électricité. Et puis, la dernière facture arrive, vous la négligez. L'action de négligence va créer l'action de la société de l'électricité d'eau pour vous mettre une mise en demeure. Mise en demeure payée. Ce sont des lois. Action, réaction. Vous ne payez pas, vous avez choisi de ne pas payer. La loi qui viendra sera la coupure. Votre coupure est la négligence de votre action inactive. C'est-à-dire que vous n'avez pas réagi. Donc, on vous a coupé. Ça, ce n'est pas affaire de sorcellerie, ce n'est pas affaire de Dieu. Il faut payer. Tu consommes, il faut payer. Ce sont des lois de la nature. Et je vis par exemple dans des familles où les gens sont, c'est-à-dire les gens sont dans une léthargie. Rien ne bouge, c'est juste le minimum. Et puis les gens sont contents de temps. Non, il y a un problème là-bas. Le problème, c'est de sortir de cette léthargie. Il faut se dire, mais je ne suis pas venu sur la terre ici pour ramasser des miettes. Même si on ne gagne pas beaucoup d'argent, on doit gagner un peu quand même. On doit pouvoir manger. Mais j'ai vu des gens qui n'avaient même pas 1000 francs par jour. Ça, c'est l'indigence. Mais l'indigence n'est pas due au fait des autres, elle est due à notre propre comportement, nous-mêmes et au comportement peut-être des autres. Vous vivez dans une famille, il y a le karma de la famille. Le karma de la famille, c'est toutes les actions qui ont été posées il y a X temps et aujourd'hui qui font que vous êtes dans cette situation. Donc, vous êtes trouvé dans des familles, les gens ne se marient pas. C'est le karma de célibataire. Vous allez trouver dans des familles, les gens ne se parlent pas. Il y a un problème. Donc, moi, j'ai observé ces choses-là. Quand les gens m'ont posé des questions par rapport aux émissions qu'on fait ici, je me dis qu'il y a des choses qu'on peut faire. Par exemple, pour faire venir l'argent, la chance pour venir l'argent.
Okay, looks like we're all back. I see some questions in the chat. Okay, so let's see. A couple of questions. So maybe simplifying what a worldview is. It seems like maybe there's a little confusion. Yeah, I don't know if there's a really simple definition. I guess maybe I would put it this way. A worldview is the sum total of all your beliefs about core reality that influence the way you experience the world. So it'd be the sum of all probably your most important beliefs collected together in a set, and that affect the way you experience the world. So with what you believe about God, what you believe about people, what you believe about purpose and the afterlife, and what you believe about morality, and these things all together form sort of a network of ideas, like a web of ideas. And those ideas are the things that guide and direct how you go through life. So a religion, you know, like Christianity is part of a worldview, but it's not the entirety of your worldview. So it is difficult to simplify, I have to admit, but a worldview is sort of the way you look at the world. If it was really simple, sort of like some people might say the lens, like the lens through which you view the world. That's an analogy. It's not a great analogy, but that is one analogy. Did anyone want to follow up on that question? Hopefully it'll become clear as we go along. So the next question I see in the chat is, not all religions are true, so how do we engage in dialogue with people whose religion we know to be false? How do we convince them without frustrating them in their belief? I can tell that's of course where we're going. This is where we're headed as a application of what we're doing. But I can give you a little preview. Of course, I mean, the first thing I always do is I try to find points of agreement. And we've talked about that a little bit. So all worldviews are not saying the same thing, but they do agree in some areas. They do have some points of agreement. So for instance, a Muslim and a Christian both believe in God, right? They believe God exists. They both think Jesus is at least a prophet. They both think that the Bible, or that God has revealed himself through a holy scripture in some way. They both have a similar set of morals, not the same, but similar. So there are points of agreement. And it's always good to at least start with points of agreement and work your way from there. And then when it comes to the points of disagreement, to just approach that with humility and as objectively as you can, as graciously as you can. And you don't have to necessarily condemn their entire worldview, because you can affirm the parts that you think are true. And almost every worldview has some truth in it, as we said before. But we're going to talk more about this as we go along. I know I'm sure you're thinking, oh, that's where we want to go right now. And I know it would be fun to just go straight there. But a lot of this work we're doing is setting up the groundwork for that. And it's very important. I'm happy to take, and if there's another question, I guess it looks like somebody has his hand up. Patrice?
Oui, j'ai une question. Je voulais savoir, on peut comprendre aisément que les visions du monde diffèrent entre un chrétien et un musulman, mais lorsque les visions diffèrent, par exemple, entre deux chrétiens, deux croyants chrétiens, quelles peuvent en être les causes, en fait? Quelles peuvent être les causes lorsque les visions du monde peuvent différer entre deux chrétiens?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, part of it could be how you interpret the Bible. So as Peter points out in his letter, he talks about the writings of Paul, and he says, some of the writings of Paul are hard to understand. So the Bible is hard to understand. There are some parts that are very difficult, and people have interpreted them in different ways. And so that can lead to Christians having very different beliefs about the world. They may have the same core beliefs, right? So Christians may agree, of course, there's a God, he's a Trinity, Jesus rose from the dead, salvation is by faith, or by grace through faith. But they might disagree on other things. So, but that may have to do with interpretations of the Bible. It may have to do with culture, like the cultural background. Those things affect what you believe about your faith. So, I mean, I think most of it is interpretations of the Bible. Do you have an example of a difference you were thinking about?
Oui, bien sûr. C'est ça rentre dans le cadre des différentes hérésies que on peut retrouver dans les églises, où peut-être certaines personnes s'auto-proclament, c'est pas être Christ à nouveau. J'ai vu une femme, une dame, je sais plus trop dans quel pays, qui disait qu'elle était l'incarnation de Christ. Donc tous ces fidèles ont pour référence cette dame en fait. Donc c'est une vision du monde différente de la nôtre, où notre croyance est basée sur Christ seul en fait.
Yes, yes. Well, some of that can also be sin, right? I mean, we are sinful. Even our thinking is affected by our sin. Everything's affected, and so sometimes we come up with ideas and thoughts that really are just a result of the sinful nature, or the result of influence from Satan. And so that there are many factors playing in that affect the way people believe. And so, you know, walking in faith and trying to stay close to God and having help in understanding the Bible is really important. You know, it's people who strike off on their own, who try to figure out everything alone without being in a community, that often get in trouble.
Et c'est ce qui arrive aussi parfois lorsque les gens essayent de trouver.
Is that another question? Okay. So yes, it's difficult. We live in a world where there's a lot of confusion, and I think it's a challenge sometimes to really stay close to what we know is reliable. It's just the Bible, being in community, right? It's important that we're part of a community, because as a community, we're more likely to maintain accurate beliefs, because we hold each other accountable. Whereas if we go off on our own, it's easy to kind of distort things. And, you know, following the Holy Spirit as closely as we can. And again, but in a community, so that we can test our beliefs and discern our beliefs together. Okay, we're going to talk more about these things. So I'm looking forward to that. Let me share my screen and we'll move forward. Unless if there are any other questions.
J'avais une préoccupation. Bah.
Yes.
En cherchant à bien comprendre la session, je ne sais pas ce que Dr. Chris serait en train de comprendre par l'œcuménisme universel, donc où toutes les religions cherchent à se retrouver.
And by all, do you mean all different versions of Christianity, like different denominations? Or are you talking about all religions, like Islam, Christianity, Hinduism?
Non, c'est le dernier. Donc, c'est l'écuménisme là universel, ou même l'islam, par exemple, dans d'autres pays. Je prends le cas de la RDC. Ils sont même censés de faire le culte ensemble. Chacun passe, ainsi de suite.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm always happy for people to have a conversation and be able to respectfully talk together. I mean, that's the only way we can ever share the gospel with people of different religions, is to be able to sit down in a respectful way and have a conversation with them. But I don't know if it's possible to really have a worship service together. I think we're worshiping, even if they believe in God, they believe in a different God. and they're not talking to the same person we're talking to when we pray to God. At least I don't think they are. And so I'm not sure it's really possible to have any kind of joint worship service, but I'm happy to always sit down and have conversations. I'm happy if groups want to get together and help, feed the poor, and help the homeless and do service projects together. But as far as joint worship together, I'm not sure that's possible. But I think through everything as an evangelist. That's one of my gifts is evangelism. So I'm always thinking about how can I have conversations in a way that will persuade people. I'm always thinking about how to do that. So I love being in conversation with people of different faiths. I'm always happy to talk about and even compare, say, well, what do you believe? And here's what I believe, because I think Jesus will always shine brighter than anything else. I'll add one more thing to that, and that is, oh, good. Thank you, Beach. I'll add one more thing, and that is, that being said, I think it's okay to affirm the things that we agree on, right? If they agree that, certain things are right and certain things are wrong, they agree with our moral beliefs, then let's say, hey, this is great, we agree, right? Or if they believe at least there's a God who created the universe, great, we agree on that, right? Good job, they got that right. If they believe that there's life after death, maybe there's just one life after death and there's judgment, that's great, we agree on that. That's a great place to talk about. So I think it's okay to affirm things that true beliefs that they have, right? Okay, let's keep going. So now we're really going to start getting into the meat of comparing different. Oh, by the way, if there are differences in the translation between the slides and your notes, that's my fault, because I added some things later and I just had to use Google Translate to translate it. So it may not always be accurate, but okay. So here's one thing to think about, a diagram that is helpful. So different religions have very different worldviews, very different sets of beliefs, but they do overlap in some ways, right? So like even Christianity and naturalism would agree on things like mathematics, the laws of logic, the importance of reason and evidence. They would agree on, physics and science. But Christians and theists or pantheists disagree on most things, but they would agree on a few things, like maybe that there is something more than the material world, that there is a spiritual side to human beings. They might agree on some moral beliefs that we have. So again, there's always going to be some points of agreement between religions. But all religions do not say the same thing. And so you can see here, even just a few examples. Islam believes one God. Oh, we also believe in one God, but in a Trinity. So we differ on that. Buddhists are not even sure that you don't even have to believe in God. They're agnostic about God. And of course, Hindus believe there are millions of gods. So for instance, Hinduism and Islam could not both be true, because Islam says there is only one God, and Hinduism says there are millions of gods, and those are contradictory views. Hindus believe that the problem with with mankind is that we're just ignorant, and that we don't understand that the world is an illusion, and it's nothing moral. There's no moral problem. But of course, the Christians, we think it's sin. We think it is a moral problem, and so that's a very, very different way to think of the world. Islam, they're going to say that the way to salvation, or the way to achieve enlightenment or salvation or however you want to talk about it. The solution to the problem is submission and practicing the 5 pillars of Islam. It's going to be works. It's going to have to do with what you do. Whereas for Christians, it's going to be salvation by faith alone. And your works follow from that. So those are 2 very different ways. So you can see that anytime someone says all religions are the same, or they all really say the same thing, I think you can show pretty clearly that that's not the case. Okay. I need to pause for just 1 second. My internet connection is saying it's unstable. I need to check something. So pardon me while I pause for just a moment here. Hey, Julia, are you using Mom's hotspot? Would you please do that? Where is she? Can you use Julia, I told you to come. Can you use a hotspot? Sorry about that. Little internet problem. Okay, we're back. Okay, so just about this chart, just looking at this chart, are there any questions about the chart?
Et où est la place des athées?
Oh, atheists. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, this chart, of course, is not complete. It's only taking a few religions. I was just trying to make the point that even just looking at 4 religions, you can see clearly that they contradict each other in very important ways. We'll talk about atheism more in a little bit. You know, I don't know much about the African religions. I probably should have read up on that a little bit, but I wasn't really sure what the religious climate is. Are there a lot of people who follow African religions in your countries? Okay.
Je voudrais prendre la parole au niveau des religions traditionnelles africaines. De façon générale, en Afrique, tout le monde sait dans la tradition que Dieu existe. Tout Africain croit en l'existence de Dieu. Et on explique qu'il existe plusieurs entités qui permettent d'entrer en contact avec Dieu, d'où l'adoration des esprits, des rivières, ainsi de suite. Ces choses sont en quelque sorte des intermédiaires, mais il y a un seul Dieu. Ça, c'est la base des religions traditionnelles africaines.
I see. Okay. That's helpful. Yeah. Well, we can talk more about that, and maybe we can, you know, talk about how we can communicate, you know, differences with people who hold those religions, and how we can sort of tailor our evangelism in ways that will be helpful. So we can definitely talk more about that. Okay, so when we think about worldviews, there's really 3 big questions that a worldview answers for people. And depending how you answer these questions, these 3 big ones, that will tell you almost everything you need to know about someone's worldview and how that will affect their life. So the big questions are: what is real? Who are we? What are human beings? What does it mean to be human? And what is good, right? What is real? Who are we? And what is good? So it has to do with ethics, with what's real, and then also just what it means to be human. So looking at your notes. So for instance, what is real is asking this. It's asking what is, basic to every worldview. What is your understanding of what exists and why? Is reality exhaustively composed of physical objects and forces like in naturalism? Or does it include immaterial things like thoughts, propositions, souls, God? Most importantly, what is ultimate reality? The most fundamental or primary reality, which is the basis of all else that exists. Is it God, matter, or nothing, or something else, right? So what is real? What's the basic reality? Who are we has to do with our humanity. Every worldview represents an understanding and vision of humanity, an account of human nature, origin, and meaning, and a diagnosis of the basic human problem and its solution. I mean, because everyone can tell that the world is not the way it should be, right? Everyone knows that the world is imperfect, that things are wrong. There are a lot of things that are messed up, there's disease and sickness, there's war, and there's fighting and hatred and all kinds of things. And everybody wants to know, well, why is it like that? Why is it like that? So that has to do with who are we? What does the human telos, as in the Greeks say, that the purpose or the meaning, or what's the function of human beings? What are we for? How does happiness, how do you achieve happiness, right? How do humans flourish? Different worldviews will have different ideas, very different ideas about how we achieve happiness or fulfillment. Some people say it's just about pleasure and like fulfilling all your desires, but others will say it has to do with service or has to do with accomplishment and achievement. And others might say it has to do with your relationship with God. How do humans flourish? What kind of life is worth living, right? So this will change your views about abortion. It'll change your views about how we relate to the elderly, how we relate to people with disabilities, right? So, of course, the Nazis in Germany in World War II had a certain worldview that said people with disabilities should just be discarded, right? They're not worth anything. And that was a very common view in the ancient world as well. Christians were really the first people ever to create orphanages and places for the sick and widows and orphans, because the Christian view of humanity is that every life is precious and created in the image of God. And then what is good? The third big question has to do with morality. Worldviews not only involve assumptions about metaphysics, which is a study of reality, and anthropology, which is a study of humanity, but also about ethics, the study of morality. What has value? What is worth desiring and pursuing? What makes it valuable? Applied to human beings, how does one become a good person, right? So some worldviews are going to say, well, you're born a good person. And some worldviews will say, no, you have to become a good person. And that is, you do that by following rules. Or some people will say, you become a good person by giving up your desires and becoming enlightened or something like that. So they all have very different ways of understanding what is good. And like a naturalistic view, they might even say there is no such thing as good, right? That it's an illusion. All that matters is survival. Okay. So now as we talk about Christian theism as a worldview a little bit here, there's a quote in your notes that is interesting as we talk about, again, we're talking more about what worldviews are, what they mean. This poem by G.K. Chesterton, he says, "You say grace before meals, all right, but I say grace before the concert and the pantomime, and grace before I open a book, and grace before sketching, painting, swimming, fencing, boxing, walking, playing, dancing, and grace before I dip the pen in ink." So just looking at this poem, if you have the notes, I'd be interested to hear people, your thoughts about what he's trying to say there. What is G.K. Chesterton trying to say in this poem? I'd love to hear thoughts on that. What is his main idea or main point here? Any thoughts?
Une question pour nous. Ah, ok. Donc, je pense qu'il veut mettre l'accent sur le fait qu'il rend grâce à Dieu, même pour les petits détails de sa vie.
Il veut dire par là également.
What else? Anyone else have some thoughts?
Il veut dire également par là que tout ce qui lui arrive, bien tous ses exploits dépendent de Dieu. Donc, par conséquent, il remercie Dieu pour tout ce qu'il fait.
Good.
C'est aussi une forme d'adoration.
Oui. Oui, quelqu'un a dit c'est une forme d'adoration. On peut aussi dire que il voudrait expérimenter, je crois qu'il expérimente où il reconnaît la présence de Dieu en tout lieu, en toute chose. La présence de Dieu en tout lieu et en toute chose.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes, I think the Christian worldview. Oh, was that someone else?
Oui, comme le psalmiste le dit, reconnais-le dans toutes tes voies. Je pense que cet homme reconnaît Dieu dans toutes ses voies.
Yes, good, good. So I think this sort of almost reminds us of the very first day we talked about how we're to love God with our heart, soul, and strength and mind, like our entire being, like everything about us, everything about our life can be worship to God. We love God with everything, whether it's any activity or anything we think about or anything we love. It's God should be involved, and it can be an act of worship. So, and this is, I don't know if this is unique to the Christian worldview, but it could be that we think that God is interested in everything about us. He's not just interested in when we come to church. He's not just interested when we are having a Bible study, but he's interested in all of our activities all throughout our entire day. So that's, I mean, that's part of what having a well-developed Christian worldview means. It means seeing how God and our beliefs about Jesus, our beliefs about morality, our beliefs about meaning and purpose, all that affects everything you do. It doesn't just affect little parts of your life. So some people take, Christianity shows how ideas fit together, right? It shows how life is connected. Everything is connected together. And it shows how it's about beliefs and practices, but it's also about a way of thinking and living, right? It's not just a few beliefs and a few practices that we do on Sunday, but it's about an entire way of thinking and living. So Christianity, as it says in the quote in your notes, Christianity is not simply a religion that tells human beings how they may be forgiven. It is a total world and life view. So another question we have is, how do we develop a Christian worldview? What does it mean to develop our Christian worldview? Well, one of the first things we can do is seek to understand our own presuppositions, right? What are the presuppositions of Christianity? As George Barna says, without a biblical worldview, all the great teaching goes in one ear and out the other. There are no intellectual pegs. In the mind of the individual, there are no pegs in the mind to hang the truths on. So they just pass through. They don't stick. They don't make a difference. So your worldview provides sort of a structure on which you hang everything else. It's like the skeleton that your body is formed around, right? The skeleton that your entire worldview is formed around. This is the basic presuppositions that you have of Christianity. That's going to include things like that God exists, that you're created for a purpose, that morality is objective, and that human beings are created in God's image. All these things dramatically affect all of your beliefs. We should want to think through every area of our lives, like our play, our work, our relationship with our spouse, our children, our prayers, our study, everything. Think through all of that in light of biblical truth, and integrate them into a growing full-orbed vision of life in the world, lived out as an expression of love for God and others. So, for instance, if you were to talk to someone who's a psychologist, and they were a Christian, they would have a very unique approach, maybe a very different approach to psychology than someone who's an atheist. Because if you're a Christian, then of course you believe that human beings have a soul, that human beings have ability to make choices, that human beings can connect to God and relate to God in certain ways, that morality is objective. So that would change your approach to psychology. It would change if you were, say, a politician or a political scientist. It would change how you think about society and how society ought to function. If you were into ethics, or even if you're a physicist, a scientist, it would change how you think about physics. Like you might think, well, if there's a God, then there ought to be some order and logic to the universe. It ought to make sense. It ought to be something we could understand. Whereas if it's just random, you might think the universe would be sort of chaotic. And so every area of life, every kind of profession, not just being a missionary or a pastor or being on staff with Campus Crusade, but every kind of job can be influenced by your faith. There's a quote from Os Guinness in your notes. It says, expressed positively, thinking Christianly is thinking by Christians about anything and everything in a consistently Christian way, in a manner that is shaped, directed, and restrained by the truth of God's word and God's spirit. So a worldview is a kind of prism through which to view the rest of your thought. To develop an integrated Christian worldview, you need to think through every one of the disciplines you study or areas that you consider from a Christian perspective through the prism of biblical truth. So just as light passes through a prism and changes into a rainbow, becomes all different colors. So as you pass something through, like let's say you were a doctor, you would pass that through the prism and you would begin to see how a Christian doctor would operate differently than maybe an atheist doctor. And the big idea is to think worldviewishly. I know it's a strange word, to think in light of worldviews about your Christian faith and about other worldviews. Think of them as total unified views of reality, not just collections of individual beliefs. They are views that need to be understood and compared and evaluated as wholes. So as I said earlier, some parts of that process are you want to seek to understand your presuppositions that underlie the beliefs, practices, and disciplines of your worldview and other worldviews. Ask questions like that dig below the surface. Constantly ask of a scientific or literary theory, or of an ethical theory, or of a work of art. Like, is this consistent with the Christian worldview? Is this expressing a Christian worldview or not? Is it consistent with what we see portrayed in the scriptures? What are the presuppositions expressed in this or underlying this view? How do these beliefs and presuppositions fit with other beliefs and presuppositions of our worldview? How do they compare and fit with the biblical presuppositions in this area? How would you express a biblically faithful view of this particular thing? So, how's the pace for the translation? I feel like I'm going very fast. Yeah, I had a feeling I was going fast. So So the idea so far is every area of life can be viewed through sort of the lens of your worldview, so that you can think as a Christian about everything. And this may be a new idea for some people. Here's a few examples from the world of art, right? So what would a Christian artist, what does it look like to be a Christian artist? Does it mean just painting pictures of Jesus only, right? Or what would it mean to be a Christian artist? Here's a few quotes in your notes. A worldview is an inescapable ingredient in all works of art. That is not to say that all artworks wear their worldview on their sleeve. For most, it is far more subtle, right? So all art assumes some kind of worldview. When you look at architecture or paintings or sculpture, it expresses a worldview. And usually it's very subtle. It can be very subtle. It's not, a painting doesn't express atheism because it says the word atheism on the painting, right? Or it's not going to express hopelessness or meaninglessness with letters and words. It's going to express it in some very subtle way. Just as a Christian painting might, or painting by a Christian might express the Christian worldview in a very subtle way. Another quote in your notes. Art itself is always a consecrated offering, a disconcertingly undogmatic yet terribly moving attempt to bring honor and glory and power to something. Art is a symbolically significant expression of what drives the human heart. With what vision the artist views the world and how the artist adores whoever, like God or whoever you adore. And this last quote in your notes is from Bono. I don't know if you know who Bono is. He's the lead singer for the band U2 that I mentioned earlier. He says, music is worship, whether it's worship of women or their designer, the world or its destroyer. The smoke goes upwards to God or something you replace God with, usually yourself. So he's just saying all music is a kind of worship, but if you're a Christian, you're worshiping God. But if you're not a Christian, you're worshiping something else, and your music is worship to that. I think that's easy to understand, probably. Okay, so as we said, we want to understand our presuppositions, and then we need to be able to unpack our own worldview. It's an interesting metaphor, unpacking a worldview. As you think through the logical, practical, and moral implications of biblical commitments and presuppositions in relation to every area of life, every issue of life. Don't settle for easy answers or superficial treatments, but really think out what it means to think Christianly about this subject. This is what it means to develop a Christian worldview. Okay. I want to do another breakout group in just a second here. I want to go back to the three big questions that we talked about earlier. So if we just use the Bible as our guide, like Christianity in general, but the Bible as a good guide, how would we answer these three big questions? And maybe not with just a single word, maybe with a sentence. How would we express what is real, right? As opposed to what's not real or what's imaginary? What is actually the most real thing in the universe, or the most real thing, or most fundamental things in the universe? Who are human beings? What does it mean to be human? How do humans become happy? What is the goal or the purpose of life? And then what is good? What are the basic fundamental ideas of morality, like what guides our moral choices. So I want to break into groups, and we'll take about, I don't know if we need 10 minutes, maybe a little less. Let's go for 5 minutes this time, actually, because I'm running a little behind. So let's go for just 5 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion. So 5 minutes breakout groups.
Je peux balancer?
Yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Ok, je le fais. Allô. Attends, la zone qu'elle va côté, c'est ce qui ça vient zone de la société.
Okay, it looks like we're all back. Okay, so how did you answer those questions? Let's briefly, I'd love to hear from a few of the groups. We don't have time for everyone, but what were the ways you answered the three big questions?
Au niveau du groupe 7, nous avons répondu ainsi aux trois questions.
Patrick, I can't hear you.
Donc, à la question de qu'est-ce qui est réel, nous avons dit l'existence de Dieu est réel, le jugement dernier, le péché, la vie, la Bible, qui est la parole de Dieu, l'existence de l'homme aussi est réel, la mort physique ainsi que spirituelle, l'existence de l'homme.
Okay. Other thoughts on the first question? What else do people put down for the first question?
Allô. Au niveau du groupe 2, nous avons dit que la création est réelle, la mort est réelle, la vie est réelle. Et l'enfer est réel.
Any other responses to question 1?
Au niveau du groupe 5, nous avons ajouté aussi que la parole de Dieu qui nous transforme, ce que nous voyons, ce que nous touchons aussi est réel. Merci.
Good. Yes.
Un autre élément que nous avons aussi proposé en dehors de ce que les autres ont déjà cité, c'est que la création de Dieu est réelle.
Good. Yes, I think these are excellent. I mean, God is the ultimate reality because God has always existed, and the creation is real. Like other worldviews think that the world is an illusion, but we believe this is real. It's permanent. There will always be a heaven and the earth. And these other things, the Word of God, of course, is an expression of the very mind of God. So of course that's real and permanent. And I think these are great examples of what is the ultimate reality. Things that you would say are eternal or unchanging. Human beings are the reality, the actual identities of each human being. What about question 2? What are some thoughts on question 2? Who are we? What does it mean to be human? How are human beings, how do they become happy?
À la question 2, qui sommes-nous? Nous avons dit au groupe 7 que nous sommes des hommes créés à l'image de Dieu. Nous sommes des êtres vivants, des disciples de Christ, des ambassadeurs, des collaborateurs du Dieu vivant, des enfants de Dieu après avoir reçu Christ. Merci.
Good, good. Yes.
Que, nous avons dit au groupe 2 que nous sommes des pécheurs rachetés par Christ.
Good.
Au groupe 5, nous avons ajouté aussi que nous sommes aimés et choisis par Dieu.
Good. What's the purpose of human beings? What is our purpose?
Pour servir à la louange, la gloire de Dieu.
Pour adorer Dieu.
Pour glorifier Dieu.
Nous sommes les imitateurs de Christ.
Yes, yes. And made for a relationship with God. We're Okay, question 3. What are some thoughts on question 3? What is good? What is the fundamental good? What is the basic good?
Dieu est bon.
Dit dans notre groupe, ce qui est bon, c'est ce qui est conforme à la volonté de Dieu. Dieu est bon.
À notre niveau,
Dieu a créé bon.
Ce qui est bon à notre niveau, c'est vivre selon la parole de Dieu, aimer Dieu, aimer les autres et annoncer l'évangile.
Yes, yes, very good. Yes, I think that's good. God is the ultimate source of good, and our understanding of good is just what God is like, right? His character. With, patience is good, love is good, grace is good, compassion is good, justice is good. These are all character qualities of God. Okay, I'm going to move on just to keep us moving here at a good pace. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Actually, I'm going to take a short break. Let's take a short break. It's already that time again. We got about 40 minutes left. So let's take a 5-minute break. Come back at 25 after the hour, and we'll try to finish out for today. C'est bon? Okay, we're back. I should also mention, I always love it when I get to see faces. So anybody who wants to turn on their camera, I always enjoy that. I feel like I'm talking to real people. But I understand sometimes you can't have the camera on. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm gonna blaze through some stuff so we can finish this section today. So one thing we might think about is how do we not only organize our own worldview, right? So this is very important before we are going out into the world to share our worldview or to talk to others about their worldview, and as we share the gospel. But we have to get clear on our own worldview and make sure we understand it, and we have a clear way or idea of how to share it. Like if we're going to communicate it, how do we go about doing that? Well, this is I'm going to give you two different ways: a narrative approach and an approach from the point of view of the image of God. So we're unpacking our worldview, two different approaches. We'll start with the narrative approach, which kind of looks at the scriptures as a big story with four parts. The creation or the origin, the fall, redemption, and glorification. So thinking those are the four parts of the Christian story of the world. And that is, you can sort of use that as a basis for sharing your worldview. So we're going to walk through each of these. So let's talk about creation. Well, first of all, you have the goodness and reality of creation. As we said before, that the creation is good. It's everything God has created. He calls it good. And then it is tainted by sin, right? But it starts out good. And this is a very different view than Gnosticism, right? Which is a religion or a worldview that's very ancient, but it also still has effects today of people that think, the spiritual things are good, but matter and physical things are bad. So the soul is good, but the body is bad. That somehow physical things are inherently corrupted or evil. And the physical world is somehow there's something inherently wrong with it. But that's not the Christian view. The Christian view is that even our bodies are good and holy. They're created good and holy. The created order expresses the way it's supposed to be, right? The original created order tells us the way the world should be, that shalom, peace, wholeness. We're made to be incomplete without God, right? We're created to be in relationship with God, so that if we're not in relationship with God, there's something missing. We're incomplete, and we can't really achieve fulfillment and happiness apart from God. And that family and society and sexuality are all grounded objectively in our created natures, right? That we actually have a design, right? There's a specific way for humans to function, and some things will be good for us and some things will be bad for us based on that design. Just like a car or an automobile is designed a certain way to take a certain kind of fuel. So if you put unleaded fuel in versus diesel fuel, if you put diesel fuel in a regular car, it'll destroy it, right? Because it's not designed for that. So you can't just put whatever you want in it. Same thing with human beings. You can't just arrange it however you want. There's a created order to things. And human beings as persons are made in the image of God. And this is very important because it gives dignity and value to human beings, despite their status, despite their race, despite their gender, despite anything about them. The image of God is something that's embedded in every human being and makes every human being valuable. So I'm talking really fast. I apologize for whoever's doing the translation. Okay, so that's creation. That gives us a nice start to our worldview. But we have to also talk about the fall. It's crucial to understand how we understand the world as Christians. Things are no longer the way they're supposed to be. Something went wrong, right? That started good, and then it was corrupted by sin. And we have to think through the nature of the problem of evil and suffering, right? So everybody wants to know, Christians and non-Christians, why is there suffering in the world? Why is there evil? Where does it come from? Well, we have an answer. We have an answer to that. It comes from the fall of human beings. They made a choice to disobey God, and the world was corrupted, and it's corrupted to this day. And human beings are corrupted because of this. And that's really why the world is messed up. Okay, so that's the essence of the fall. I know I'm going very quickly here. And then of course, this third part of the story is the happy part, the redemption. right? The solution to the problem. So you have to think through the nature of atonement, the sacrifice of Jesus and how it meets our deepest human needs. Not only does it give us forgiveness, but it gives us restoration. It repairs our broken image. It provides meaning and purpose. It provides belonging and community. It provides power and help to live a certain way. And we seek to communicate the radical truth of the incarnation, right? So part of our worldview is that you have God and you have man, and the two are very, very different. And it seems like there's this huge gap between us, but Jesus has bridged that gap, right? That he has made it possible for us to actually know God and have a relationship with God by becoming a man, right? So you have someone who's fully God and fully man. Only the incarnated Jesus could be a bridge between God and man. That's the beauty of the incarnation. We believe that we have to live out our lives in community, right? That isolation is bad. It's not good for us to be alone. That's a very important part of our worldview, right? That will change how we think about society. That being isolated is a very bad thing. Okay, so that's redemption. So again, we're fleshing out our worldview. We're bringing it all out within the context of the story of the world. And finally, there's glorification, which is our destiny to be with God forever in the new heaven and new earth. So we explore the implications for us now of what our destiny will be. What God is going to do with us and for us, right? What is our ultimate state once the new heaven, new earth has been created? What is it going to be like? And how does that affect the way we live now? And we can present to others, portray the vision of our destiny in compelling ways, right? Talking about heaven is a wonderful thing to think about, that ultimately how everything will be restored, how everything will be made new. Everything bad will be repaired. All tears will be wiped away. There'll be no more suffering. That's a beautiful vision, and it affects how we live now. And it affects how we treat people. We have to treat people with eternity in mind. C.S. Lewis is famous for a quote. I'm going to read this from your notes. He says, "It is a serious thing to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long, we are, in some degree, helping each other to one or other of these destinations. There are no ordinary people," right? That's where that's our destination, right? As Christians, we believe that ultimately we'll be glorified. We'll have a glorified body, and it's theologians differ on what that means, but it probably like the resurrected body of Christ. It will probably be something amazing to behold. And if we saw it now, if we saw somebody in that state now, we'd probably think they're an angel. Okay, so that's the narrative approach. So that's a way to talk about and think about the Christian worldview that touches all the bases. It touches all the important core beliefs of Christianity. Any questions about the narrative approach?
Je voulais demander quelque chose un peu particulier, mais qui touche un point qu'on a vu. Pensez à la nature du problème et du mal. Alors la question que je suis tenté de poser, la nature du mal, d'où vient le mal? Quelle est l'origine, la source du mal? Parfois, quand on parle des questions de vision du monde, ces problèmes se posent. D'où vient le mal? Oui, j'en ai fini, c'est la question.
Where does evil come from? Yeah, this is a very difficult question. There's a lot of ideas about this, but from a Christian point of view, normally we say the fall, right? So it's a choice, a free choice, in my view, a free choice made by Adam and Eve to disobey God, and that free choice is what set in motion the evil that's in the world. Now, you might ask, well, wasn't that sort of prompted by Satan, right? Didn't Satan tempt them in the wilderness? Of wasn't there already evil in the universe in the form of Satan? And I think that's true. That was not the origin of evil. So that's prior to the existence of the earth. Really, the origin of evil in the earth would be Adam and Eve, but Satan would be pre-existing that. So how did Satan go wrong? Well, if you believe in free will, then you have to believe that it's possible, even for an angel or a human who's created good, to make choices to sin, to disobey, even if they're created good. Some people say that human beings, even though they're created good, were vulnerable because they don't know the future, right? We long to know what will happen next, but we don't. So there's a natural anxiety that can creep up, and so Satan sort of took advantage of that. So that would be the origin of evil, as far as I can tell. It's just free choice. But that's a difficult question, so I don't know if that helps. Anyone want to follow up with another question?
Oui, j'ai une question. Donc, je vois qu'il a présenté, il a montré comment est-ce qu'on doit présenter la vision du monde, mais je ne vois pas à quel moment est-ce qu'il faut demander aux gens de s'engager. Parce que je pense que le but de la vision du monde, c'est de susciter de la croyance, mais en même temps, dans la croyance, il y a l'engagement. Donc, à quel moment de la présentation faut-il demander aux gens de s'engager? Merci.
Good. Yes. So communicating your worldview, I would say, could be a part of sharing the gospel, but it isn't the same thing as sharing the gospel. So in this presentation I've just given, there's the gospel is not in it, right? This is not evangelism necessarily. So I would say this is sort of background, like if someone wanted to understand the gospel more deeply, then you might share some of this part of your worldview. These are sort of the underlying presuppositions that make sense of the gospel, right? If they don't understand the fall, they won't understand why they need Jesus, right? If they don't understand redemption and how Jesus does that, they won't understand why they need Jesus. So I would say inviting people to commit or to receive Christ, of course, is a part of sharing the gospel, but just explaining your worldview is not the same thing as that. Does that help?
Oui, merci. Merci.
I think this is good for communication, but it's also very good for you. It's good for us to understand all the implications of our worldview. The better we understand what the Christian worldview is, what are the fundamental truths of the Christian worldview, it can then start to affect all parts of our life. It can start to sort of grow out into the rest of our lives and affect everything we do, right? Okay, let's talk about another way to think about the Christian worldview, right? And these are sort of, again, like a skeleton that you would hang the meat on, right? It sounds that's kind of a crude analogy. They're the framework that you put the building on, right? You have a frame and then you put the walls on. So this is a framework that helps you give a way to remember these truths and to think about them, how they connect. So the Imago Dei, I think it involves, first of all, being rational, right? That like God, humans are able to think and reason and form premises, from premises to a conclusion. We're self-conscious and aware of our own thinking. We're able to do things like math and science and physics, logic, and we're able to write and do all these things because we're rational. That's what sets us apart from other animals. We're also relational like God. Like God is a Trinity. He is inherently relational. He is a community in himself. And so human beings are in his image, are inherently communal as well. We cannot exist in isolation. We require community. We're spiritual, right? We're more than just physical beings. We're more than just matter. We can relate to God because of this, right? Because we have a spiritual part of us, we can connect with God because God is spirit. We have an affective part of us. We have emotions, right? And theologians differ on whether God has emotions in the same way that we do. Some people think God doesn't ever change in his mental state. But I think God is portrayed in the scriptures as having emotions. Jesus, when he came to earth, he had emotions. And so God has emotions. And so being created in his image, the emotional part of us is an important part of who we are. It's not a flaw. It's a part of our design. It's good. We are creative, right? God is inherently a creative God, and we are in his image. We are creators as well. We're able to build, produce, create art and beauty. We can imagine things and create things just from our imagination. If you think about it, everything in the room you're sitting in right now was once in someone's imagination, right? Everything that's made by human beings was once just an imaginary idea that someone thought of and then made. Right? Everything starts as an idea. So we're creative, and that's a good thing. And we are volitional, meaning we have a will. We can make choices and decisions. We're agents, right? We're able to choose. We're not just acting on instinct. We're not like robots who just act according to a program, but we actually have choices. We can make choices. And that's like God, right? God is not a robot or compelled to do things a certain way. God is free to choose how to do whatever he wants, and we're responsible. Part of our relationship with God is responsibility given to us, right? So with freedom comes responsibility. So we're to care for the earth, we're to care for one another, we're to build a culture that glorifies God. These are the cultural mandate in the Old Testament. And finally, we are moral. We relate to each other above just rationally, like computers, or volitionally. We also are moral. There are standards. There are things that are right and wrong, and we inherently have this sense of right and wrong that we get from God, because God is a moral being. God believes in right and wrong. God has a certain way that he thinks is correct. We have a conscience, and when we violate our conscience, something tells us that we're doing wrong. Okay. So that was kind of quick. Any thoughts or questions about the Imago Dei approach, or thinking about the Christian worldview? All of these facts about human beings have implications, right? The fact that we're creative means the arts are a really important part of a culture, right? That creating things, not just buildings, but objects of beauty, that's part of living out the image of God. So we should value art. We're spiritual, right? We're not just physical beings. So when something's going wrong with the person, when they're depressed, say, we should look for solutions, not just chemical solutions, but spiritual or emotional solutions. So any questions so far about that? Okay. So that's unpacking the Christian worldview. And so their next step that we're going to take is starting to look at other worldviews, right? How other worldviews compare to Christianity. Oh, is that a question?
Is that a question? Question?
Okay. So we're going to look at some of the basic worldview options and how they differ from the Christian worldview. So that's important to see what are the points of agreement, what are the points of disagreement between various worldviews. This a chart in your notes on the next page that has the 3 major worldview summary. And so this is kind of some information in transition to the next section. But you can see how Christian theism answers some of these 8 categories, these 8 questions. I'm just going to read the top of this page here. A worldview is a commitment, a fundamental orientation of the heart that can be expressed as a story or in a set of presuppositions, which we hold about the basic constitution of reality, and that provides a foundation on which we live and move and have our being. That's the definition given by James Sire. So he has eight questions. The way he thinks about it, there's 8 big questions. The questions are at the bottom of the page there. It says, what is prime reality? What is the nature of external reality? What is a human being? What happens to a person at death? Why is it possible to know anything at all? How do we know what is right and wrong? What is the meaning of human history? And what personal life-orienting core commitments are consistent with this worldview? So if you look at the chart, from the Christian theism point of view, prime reality is God himself, an infinite personal spirit being, right? God is not a physical being. God is not made of atoms, right? Atoms are something he created. He existed as pure spirit, infinitely. External reality is dualistic in the sense that there's physical and there's non-physical, right? There's two substances in the world. Souls are things that are made of immaterial substance, right? They're not physical. Your body is made of matter, and then the universe contains both. What are human beings? Well, they're persons made in the image of God, fallen spiritually and morally, and they're both spiritual and physical beings, right? We're a combination. We're an interesting combination, whereas God and the angels are pure spiritual beings with no physical parts. We have a physical part and a spiritual part, so we're kind of an interesting blend. But we're made good, but fallen. What is death? What happens after death? Well, for us, it's a transformation into a new state. It's judgment, and either heaven or hell is the traditional Christian view, and that we have a destiny to one or the other. Knowledge. How do we know things? Well, because we're made in the image of God, we're personal, rational beings. God is all-knowing, right? God knows all things, so we're able to know things, not everything the way God can, but we can know things because we're made in his image. How do we know right and wrong? Well, again, because we're made in the image of God, and God is good, ethics are going to be whatever lines up with the character and nature of God. If God is generous and kind and loving, then that's what's good. And because we're in his image, that will follow for us as well. History is linear, right? It's not a circle that keeps repeating over and over again. It's actually headed somewhere. That history has started at a certain point and is progressing toward a goal, and ultimately ending in God's completed perfect rule over the cosmos and the new heavens and the new earth, where evil has been banished and conquered completely. And the core commitments would be to glorify God and seek his kingdom. Those are the things that drive everything we do ultimately. We're seeking to bring him glory and to enjoy our relationship with him. As it says in the Westminster Catechism, our purpose is to enjoy God, or to glorify God and enjoy him forever. It's one statement of our purpose. Okay, I'm going pretty fast. Sorry, Patrick. So thank you. Okay, so, and then in the next page, there's, oh, actually, no, let's stay on that chart for a moment. Of course, you can look at how the Christian worldview differs from, say, naturalism, which is typically an atheist point of view where there's no God. And then the third column is the pantheistic view, where you have a God, but God is really the same thing as creation. God and creation are one. And you can see how just that very fact about what God is like, or whether God exists, will change your answers to all these questions. So for instance, ethics, look at row 6. How do we know what's right and wrong? Well, in naturalism, it's just an evolutionary adaptation, right? There's no objective right and wrong. What we believe about right and wrong is just the result of evolution, random, unguided evolution. And so even though we think it's good, like having marriage is good, but that's just an evolved character quality that we want to pair off as husbands and wives. That's just an evolved desire. It's not really objectively good. It's just that's the way things are. And it could change, right? So what's good is just whatever evolution does, maybe whatever helps us survive, which is a very stark view. And of course, there's no life after death. And that changes dramatically how you live your life, right? If you think there's going to be accountability for your actions, ultimately, you'll live one way. If you think there's no accountability, ultimately, you'll live a different way, perhaps. Now, there are lots of atheists who are good people, but if you really live consistently, there's no real ultimate purpose for being good, other than when it makes you feel good, right? So to be good when it's convenient for you. As you look at this chart, do you have any questions or anything on there that you'd like me to expand on? And again, it's only looking at naturalism and pantheism, how they compare. Do you see any points of agreement on the chart? What are some points of agreement? There aren't many. There's a few.
Justement, le tableau, bon, je ne sais pas si je suis le seul. Je ne sais pas à quelle il est et on n'arrive pas à vous suivre.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Wow, that changes things. Well, let's see. I don't have a slide with it on there. Well, I'll have to see if I can send a copy of it to the WhatsApp.
Le tableau à la page 17 du manuel. Ça dépend de comment on l'a imprimé, mais c'est dans le manuel qu'on a eu là. Si vous regardez.
Great, thank you. I guess at this point I'll just... I guess at this point I'll just leave it open for any...
Moi aussi, c'est page 19.
We have a few minutes for any questions about anything. Yes. We have a few minutes we can ask questions. I'm really excited about tomorrow. It's one of my favorite parts of the class. So tomorrow is going to be really fun. Any questions as we close? Oh, Beach, yes, you can share the page. That would be great. Okay. Yeah, so I think you have to turn off the optimization feature.
J'ai une question.
It's fuzzy. So.
Oui, on a parlé de la chute et la chute est intervenue dans un contexte d'un monde parfait où l'homme avait le libre arbitre de choisir le mal ou le bien. Alors, dans la glorification future, est-ce que ce libre arbitre serait toujours là? N'y aurait-il pas une probabilité de rébellion comme celle qui fut dans le monde parfait de l'époque?
That's a great question. I have some thoughts on that, but I don't know if there's a definitive answer. So one view is that we're actually not capable of sin at that point. So that's one view. That in the glorified state, we're no longer capable of sin. In another view, there's that our relationship with God will be different than it was, say, in the garden. It'll be even more intimate, such that we're so satisfied with God that sin is not even slightly interesting to us, that to disobey God or to rebel in some way does not even cross our mind. Sometimes I think of it like if you've just had a very big meal, like a really, really big, really good meal with some friends, and you're very full, your stomach is really full and you can't eat another thing. If you've ever been that, I've been that way a few times. And then you're watching the TV and a commercial comes on for McDonald's or something, and they're showing a hamburger and how juicy their hamburger is, it repulses you, right? I don't know if this happens to you. This happens to me. I look at that and I think, ugh, gross. I can't, it just looks terrible. I have no desire. It just repulses me. I think in heaven, in the glorified state, that's our relationship with God will be so full of God that the very idea of disobedience or rebellion is just repulsive to us. Like there would be absolutely no desire, zero desire to ever disobey. So that's one way I think of it. And so our relationship with God will be different than it was in. Any other questions? We can maybe take one more and then we need to probably wrap up. Mama! Okay. Well, maybe we can close. Someone can close us with prayer, and we'll be prepared for the next day. Tomorrow, make sure you've done your reading. I think we'll be talking more about the reading tomorrow. And then, and if you try some worldview interviews, give it a shot. I'd love to hear about them tomorrow. But I'll stop there. And Gabriel, do you want to close us?
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Chris. Est-ce que vous pouvez ouvrir vos micros et les caméras pour que nous disions merci à Dr. Chris? Est-ce que vous pouvez ouvrir vos micros? Wow!
Voilà.
Nous bénissons le Seigneur.
Merci.
C'est puissant enseignement.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci infiniment. Nous allons demander au pasteur Savi de lever sa voix, prier pour clôturer et remettre la suite de la formation entre les mains du Seigneur. Merci à toute la merveilleuse équipe de traduction, la coordination technologique sous la haute supervision du révérend Biche. Merci pour maman Perrine, pour les moments inspirants de prière au début. Demain, nous allons demander à la sœur Calais. La sœur Calais est là. La sœur Calais nous entend?
Oui, je vous entends, papa.
Oui, donc tu vas nous conduire dans un moment de prière à 14h moins 20. Demain, nous allons nous connecter à partir de 13h30. N'oubliez pas les devoirs, s'il vous plaît. Il y avait 2 pas de réflexion. Il y a très peu de personnes qui ont déjà donné. N'oublions pas aussi les questionnaires que nous allons faire. Nous allons donner aux gens pour qui sera la base de notre rédaction du mémoire final. Continuons à lire les 3 livres au programme. Merci beaucoup. Pasteur Savi. Oui, quelqu'un a une question?
Oui. La session du samedi, s'il vous plaît.
Donc, c'est à la même heure parce qu'il y a un grand décalage horaire de 6 heures entre l'état où le formateur est et l'heure du Togo.
Ok. C'est le devoir. En fait, je veux dire, c'est la composition le samedi.
Donc, on aura les précisions demain.
Ok, merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Prions. Seigneur, nous voulons te dire encore merci ce soir. Merci pour ce 4e jour. Et merci pour tout ce que tu es en train de nous enseigner. Et merci pour ton esprit qui nous fortifie. Seigneur, nous remettons une fois de plus l'enseignant entre tes mains. Remplis-le encore, Seigneur, de plus de vigueur, de force, afin qu'il puisse nous révéler encore des choses cachées et profondes. Dans le nom de Jésus. Seigneur, la soirée encore entre tes mains et la journée de demain aussi entre tes mains. Merci pour tout ce que tu as encore préparé pour nous. Dans le nom de Jésus. Merci Seigneur, parce que tu as fait au-delà de nos ententes. Au nom de Jésus, nous avons prié et reçu. Amen.
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 Excellente soirée.
Amen.
À demain.
Amen. Merci.
Amen. Merci.
Amen.
Merci.